Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Market Open. It is Monday, April 6th, as we start off the second week in April for the global capital equity markets. We have so much to discuss. So much has happened in the past 24 hours. And quite frankly, I think this will be one of the more eventful weeks of not only April, but 2026 in general, based on some of the stuff that Trump said yesterday. Also based on some of the stuff that Trump said over the weekend. We have a green pre-market based on some of those comments, and also some, you guessed it, headlines that have popped up that are kind of telling markets it's okay to go green. Will that green actually last? Time will tell. And quite frankly, the next 40 minutes, we're going to see if that green has any chance of lasting. But we are green. And it's actually a pretty decisive level of green. You got the S&P right there up about 0.2%, 657, very close to that 658.71 high that we had a couple of days ago. And if we can break that, I mean, it would be very nice to see if we can actually, make some room up to 660. You have hoods up 1.7%, Bitcoin almost at 70,000, 69.5. You got SanDisk, that's up 3.9%. All the memory stocks got upgraded this morning from JP Morgan. So that's why memory, Micron, SanDisk, Western Digital, Seagate are all having some love. Rocket Lab, that's up 2.1%. Oracle's up 0.5%. Intel's up 2%. Amazon, Snapchat, Webull, Ondas, SoFi, NVIDIA. They're all green, at least for now. And hopefully that green will hold. But we're going to talk about why it's green, what happened over the weekend, and the tweets that have the entire market kind of wondering what exactly is going to happen on Tuesday, 8 p.m., which is a very important day and in a very important time as per Mr. Trump. And so we'll see how much we can hold on to these levels. Again, Bitcoin right there, 69.5. S&P 500 is green in the pre-markets. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Hopefully everyone had a good weekend. We're going to get right into it and talk about what happened over the weekend with Mr. Donnie T and kind of why the markets are reacting the way they're reacting and how we can go red, which is kind of the first question that I have for everyone here in the chat today, which is, do you think this green holds? So do we get more green throughout the day, flip to red, or stay flat? It would not surprise me if either three of these options ended up playing out. Maybe some of the headlines signal a little bit more green, but quite frankly, I wish we were red because usually we flip from red to green. If we're green, we kind of usually flip from green to red. This is continuing the momentum we had last week. We were up 3%. We were almost up 4%. We gave back about 1%. So we are up from those Monday lows at 630.5. Was that the actual bottom? Time will tell. But at least right now we're green, and hopefully maybe that green can hold up some of the momentum. VIX is up 4%. That is correct. So you do have the VIX spiking. You also have oil, which is down from yesterday at 110.3, but yesterday was at 114.50, but it's still above 100. So the fact that we're holding the market the way it is, and we're not at the Monday lows, even though oil is still relatively much stronger than where it was on Monday, now at 110. Not 115, still 110. If that gets below 100, I'll be a little bit more convinced that this rally is legit. I think a lot more people will be, but until then, obviously, the rising oil prices are not good for inflation. They're not good for jobs. They're not good for consumer demand. I mean, there's all these different cascading derivative effects that happen as a result of oil being high. And hopefully, we'll see some resolution to that starting to come down a little bit more. All of the above is the correct answer. It's one of those markets where you cannot really pick long, short, or flat because, honestly, all three have an equal chance of happening, just given how price action has played itself out over the past couple of weeks, past couple of months, to be honest, since February. This is where we are. This is where we are, and this is the current state of the market. So let's get right into it. This is the tweet that, if you did not see the tweet over the weekend because you were busy enjoying your Easter or spending time with family, then you probably are going to be a little surprised when you see the vernacular of this tweet. But if you did see it, well, it's definitely impacted the market. Trump said yesterday, Tuesday will be power plant day and bridge day all wrapped in one in Iran. He's essentially referencing bombing the Iranian power plants, energy infrastructure, and bridges, the bridges they've already done to an extent on Thursday. There will be nothing like it. Open the effing straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah, President Donald J. Trump. This tweet was so crazy that even Grok on X said it was a fake tweet when it came out. And people were asking, is this real? And Grok was like, no, it's obviously fake. Nope, it's real. It is very real. So I thought my mother-in-law was lying when she read that to us. Yeah, I mean, I woke up and I was just like, it can't be real. And then I was like, well, it's real. And part of me was like, well, I mean, is it that unbelievable that Trump would? No, not really. So you have that tweet come out on Sunday. On Saturday, you had Trump tweet 8 p.m. What does he mean by 8 p.m.? He is extending the original 48-hour deadline, which would have expired today at 10 a.m. He gave a 48-hour deadline to the Iranians on Saturday. And that extension was then filed on Sunday, where he said Tuesday, 8 p.m. So Trump is now saying Tuesday, 8 p.m. will be the day or the time and day in which he ultimately makes a decision, I guess, on bombing energy infrastructure. Now, I think the market right here is obviously saying that this is not going to happen. That is why the market is green. If the market really thought that Trump was going to be bombing massive levels of energy infrastructure in Iran at Tuesday, 8 p.m., I don't think we would be as green as we are. So the market is calling a bluff on this. Oil is down. Stocks are up. If the market is wrong on this, which the market has been wrong various times on interpreting Trump tweets, then Tuesday is not going to be pretty. And it's kind of hard to trade in between there because you just don't know what's going to happen. If you assume it's going to be a taco and another extension, you probably buy the dip. If you think it's going to actually get ugly and he's going to bomb energy infrastructure, then that's not going to be the best either. So you have Tuesday, 8 p.m. as the new deadline for Trump, potentially on bombing Iran. And we are going to see how that ends up playing out over the next 24 hours. Trump also will be live today at 1 p.m. Eastern, giving a press conference from the White House on an update on the Iranian war. Then last night, ironically, you had an article come out just before the markets opened. The U.S. and Iran and a group of mediators are discussing terms for a potential 45-day ceasefire. Sources said the chances for a deal in the next 48 hours are slim, but the last-ditch effort is the only chance to prevent a dramatic war escalation. And the key word right there is that discussing terms for a 45-day ceasefire are slim, because this is what we got from the Iranian news media this morning. Launch of a new Iranian missile towards enemy sites. Early warning after detecting an Iranian missile attack targeting Greater Tel Aviv. That came from Israel last night. And then you have the Pakistan Foreign Ministry say this morning, crude oil stocks at around 12 days of cover, supported by incoming cargoes and scheduled imports. Refineries continue to operate at optimal levels. And then you have the Iranian state media say petrochemical complex at Iran's Mardavash was attacked by U.S. and Israel. So you have 4 headlines this morning basically showing that we have more escalation after this headline came out last night, which is part of the reason we went green last night. Literally, the futures flipped green from being flat when they saw this headline around a potential 45-day ceasefire. Obviously, the chances of it being slim was kind of the key word to dissect from that. Pakistan, Egypt, Turkey, they're trying their best to potentially get this ceasefire to take place. And then you have Pakistan come out saying, hey, we have refineries that are likely not going to be able to import or export as much oil as we thought. You have Israel that is claiming that Iran attacked them last night. And then you have the Iranians this morning saying a petrochemical complex at one of Iran's major refineries was attacked by the U.S. and Israel. None of those headlines seem to necessarily be hurting the equity markets. I mean, so far, S&P is still holding on to its green. I would imagine that these headlines proliferating throughout the day would be counterproductive and would show a further escalation of the war, which would be bad, and just replay the same story that we've seen, which is that we get some good news, ceasefire. Remember we had that New York Times 15-point framework of a ceasefire, everything pumped, and then it kind of gets downplayed because it's not as real as people thought. And based on the headlines that I'm seeing that came in literally 5 minutes ago, it looks like that's not the case. Also, you have poor Reuters. Iran has rejected a temporary ceasefire proposal and says that it has formulated a response to the U.S. demands to end the war. Iran's foreign minister said they will announce the response to the U.S. 15-point plan, quote, when necessary. When necessary. So you've got Reuters reporting that ceasefire that I just talked about, or that 45-day potential ceasefire, Iran has already rejected, which it was kind of obvious. It was unlikely for them to hold on to it. Iran wants a full end to the war. They don't want a ceasefire, and they want an end to the war on their terms. Trump, based on that tweet with the profanity that he's using, you can tell is getting pretty annoyed and wants to end this thing soon, and is likely not getting the cooperation that he needs from the Iranians, which is why he's so upset. And so you've got both at an impasse right now. And I wonder if that results either in some level of negotiation for a peace deal, or at least somewhat of a ceasefire, which it seems like isn't fully happening, or a bomb. And based on how Trump is threatening this Tuesday, 8 p.m. deadline, it feels like it could theoretically be a bomb, which is obviously not the best thing when it comes to stopping the escalation. White House official, Trump, quote, hasn't signed off on any ceasefire plan. White House on potential ceasefire plan, one of many ideas. You got that coming in a minute ago. White House says Trump hasn't signed off on any ceasefire plan, and the White House on a potential ceasefire plan says it is just one of many different ideas. It's a headline-driven market. It is a volatile market. It is a market that you really can't look at fundamentals to discuss. I mean, we'll talk about non-farm payrolls and inflation and all that macro stuff, but a lot of that stuff falls to the wayside when you get a headline at 11 p.m. last night from Axios saying, 45-day ceasefire, everything pumps. And then you get 5 headlines this morning saying not only have there been more attacks, but a petrochemical complex in Iran has been hit by the U.S. and Israel. At least that's what Iran is saying. We'll find out if that's true over the coming days. And then you have, these headlines by the administration saying that they aren't even supporting any level of ceasefire anytime soon. So, I mean, yes, it's confusing. It's weird. It's annoying. It is emotionally draining, but this is the nature of the market that we're in right now. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like that is going away anytime soon. JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon, CEO, came out with a lot of statements today. He had an annual letter, and the stuff that he said about private credit, I think, is a little bit more interesting, and we'll talk about that later. But he's also pretty annoyed that this war is taking place, and he is warning about inflation and a variety of other issues that can happen. Now, he philosophically believes that it is the right thing to do because ultimately, in his political beliefs, it is time to stop the state sponsor of terror, which is Iran. Again, that is his political belief. But from an economic perspective, he's obviously warning that it might not be as pretty as some people think. You had Larry Fink come out yesterday and quite frankly say that we are likely to look at a global recession if we were to have oil stay at these levels. And, obviously that would not be the best thing either. Here's what Larry Fink said yesterday.
I could see a year from now oil at $40 a barrel. Or I could see it above $150 a barrel. Well, we have two very extreme outcomes. And in my conversations throughout the world with the U.S. government, all that, to me, everybody has to recognize there's not going to be an outcome that's somewhere in the middle. It's going to either be two extremes. Is Iran a country that can be accepted by the international community? Can Iran be a country that participates in the world again? And if that outcome occurred, then you could have the Iranian oil back into the marketplace alongside the growth of the Venezuelan oil. And you could paint a picture where oil prices could be lower than they were prior to the Iranian war. If there's a cessation of war, and yet Iran remains a threat to trade, a threat to the Straits of Hormuz, then I would argue that we could have years of, above $100, closer to $150 oil.
What happens to the global economy if that happens? How do we see it?
We'll have global recession.
I think Trump knows that, and I would imagine that's why he is so keen on getting some level of ceasefire or deal, because obviously he wants to get out of this situation. He's looking for the off-ramp. He already told the American people we won. We got rid of their nukes. We pushed them back 20 years. So as per the White House address last Wednesday, he has made the statement that the United States has already won, which is begging the question, why aren't we leaving? Why is the Strait still not open? What more do we have to do? And, you've got all these questions that are still popping up, which is obviously getting the markets to be a little bit more tense than not. And we've seen that with oil prices. But I would imagine Trump does not want to launch us into a global recession with oil at 150. You have some new estimates coming out this morning saying oil could get to 150 by the end of the year, and we'll talk about those. But obviously, if that were to create a massive recession, that would not be the best thing for the United States. We got some headlines from Russia right here. Russia says Ukraine has attacked one of their ports. The attack caused a fire at different fuel tanks in this port. Russian Defense Ministry, 4 oil product reservoirs caught fire. Russia's Defense Ministry, SPM's oil pipeline and loading berth of CPC are damaged. Okay, so you've got Russia coming out now. We already had the Iranians, the Israelis, and the Pakistanis come out this morning talking about different attacks. Why not add Russia and Ukraine to it? There you go. This is just a mess, bro. Across the entire world. This is just a freaking mess. But those are your headlines. Russia's defense ministry accusing Ukraine of attacking a reservoir and 4 different oil products along with fuel tanks at one of their ports. Yes, we will have PMI today. We will have PMI today, and we will discuss that as well. Surprisingly, even with all those headlines, the ceasefire not being accepted, the Pakistan stuff, Israeli attacks, Iran attacks, and Russia-Ukraine further escalation, you are not seeing the market get hit that bad yet. Maybe we'll see when the actual market opens. S&P is still holding on to a bit of that green, at least for the time being. Non-farm payroll. So I wasn't live on Friday because the market was closed, but the numbers were actually pretty good, if you believe them. The U.S. added 178,000 jobs ahead of the 65,000 expected. The unemployment rate actually went down from 4.4 to 4.3, which is kind of crazy. Highest gain since March of 2025, but last month's revision also came in. We went from negative 92 to negative 133,000, which was the worst for jobs since December 2020. I don't know how to believe any of this stuff anymore. I mean, like, you would think that we added a significant amount of jobs and that's a good thing, but technically it's not for inflation. Second of all, it's hard to imagine that it's a believable thing when the last month was revised. So I think we have to wait until next month, see if this 178,000 gets revised down, because it's happened for at least 14 months in a row that we've had revisions. And so I think you got to take it with a grain of salt. It is decent to see this level of job growth, because going into corporate earnings, if people have jobs and this is true, then obviously that's going to be good for earnings in general, which the expectations for S&P 500 earnings have actually increased to $323 a share. Put your favorite multiple on that, 21, 22, 25, 30 times, whatever multiple you want to put on that to get your S&P target for this year. But you need people to have jobs for those earnings to hold up. Treasuries right here for the 10-year, 4.329. But it was relatively nice data, at least on Friday, when the markets were closed for those non-farm payrolls. Japan's 10-year bond has reached its highest level in 29 years. That is correct. Bonds across the world have not really calmed down. I mean, the U.S. was inching towards 4.5, so at least we're at 4.3, which is not good either. But you've had a little bit of calming down. Japan, on the other hand, just given what's going on with their stimulus package, and the United States has introduced, or at least Trump has introduced, a new form of budget planning for fiscal year 2027 that we'll talk about. A lot of that is focused on defense. You know, that is another thing the markets are considering. How much money are we going to print to be able to actually fund all this stuff, which Japan is currently at the moment printing a lot. Tom Lee, he was live earlier this morning. His argument is that the risk reward to buy stocks is probably the best it's been in a while.
You know, as March unfolded, the war looked like not to be a short war, but, you know, one that was longer. And I think markets have been adjusting to that. But as you know, we're still in the midst of this fog of war because we don't know when it ends. But we did look at the past 7 major war events, and the stock market adjusts pretty quickly. Within the first 10% of the entire duration of a war, the stock market usually bottoms. So, you know, World War II was almost 5 years, and the market bottomed 5 months into that war. So I do think, as bad as March was, we've probably seen a big part of that adjustment. And now I think the risk reward is quite good for stocks.
And 90 to 95% of the weakness is behind us, in your view.
Yes. And I think people are kind of torn, because if someone sold in March and the market, they may have sold 3 or 4% off the highs, and we're just 5% off the highs, they've got a dilemma, because the market's only a little bit lower than where they might have sold, but it wouldn't take a lot for the markets to begin to recover. So I do think investors who go into cash really have to start to think about how war, as much as it's a crisis, people focus on the negatives initially, but then they need to start thinking about the opportunity on the
we
other
talked
side.
about the false start in oil when it sold off. There was also a day where we were down 200 or 300 points. Trump said something, we were up 1,300 points. So is it spring loaded right now, but wary? It's like, I think everybody's like, well, yeah, we've seen this before. We're going to need more real evidence before it makes a move again like that. But what kind of move would it make if there was a definitive agreement that Iran even admitted to? Because they haven't admitted to anything yet, but that's their playbook.
Yeah, I mean,
You think spring loaded?
really spring loaded, because one, we know that policy and the path of the war is more important than the central bank. So that's the single biggest driver of the stock market. the stock market's getting a bit of a boost from all the defense spending. So the economy is not in horrible shape.
Oil stocks are doing pretty well too.
Yeah, oil stocks are doing well. But then if there's Middle East peace, of course, that's got a lot of future benefits. So I think if there is a surprise and the war does end, the reaction would be very explosive, as you said.
I just want to read you what and we're talking. What Leslie was talking about earlier. This is the Jamie Dimon letter, mostly bullish, but then makes this point at the end, sort of one section, where he says the skunk at the party, and it could happen in 2026, which is now, would be inflation slowly going up as opposed to slowly going down. This alone could cause interest rates to rise, asset prices to drop. This would make Kevin Warsh's life a lot more difficult. And interest rates are like gravity to almost all asset prices. And falling asset prices at one point can change sentiment rapidly and cause a flight to cash.
That was kind of the core point of Jamie Dimon's letter, which is that he is very worried about inflation. The other thing that we'll talk about later in the show is Jamie Dimon's concerns about private credit. Remember, he was one of the first people to say there are some cockroaches out there. He did mention he doesn't think it's systematic like 2008 or systemic. So although he is very bearish on private credit and he thinks there's a lot of bad actors, he doesn't think it's going to cause a systemic downfall like the mortgage crisis did in 2008. But inflation seems to be the biggest concern out of that letter that he put out to everyone this morning.
Your reaction to that?
Well,
And that's, by the way, his downside scenario. I mean, that's sort of how he's laying it out.
I think that's everyone's concern because we've had several inflation shocks now in the last 6 years, right? The first was the COVID supply chain, and then was the tariff shock. And then this is a war shock that's going through, and nobody wants consumers to suddenly expect higher prices. So I think that's what everybody is watching carefully. But it doesn't mean that just because prices are going up because of this, of gasoline, that inflation expectations are unanchored. So I do think right now it's a critical time for the Fed to have credibility and for consumers not to expect higher prices going forward.
So 7,700 is still your call by the end of the year. Becky and I, we did some great work on Friday. I don't know whether you saw, but
Full hours worth.
we did an hour, but we brought a really good jobs number to
Yes.
to the that was a surprise to everyone. The risk on both sides of the dual mandate has been in the forefront of everyone's mind. And you can't even, they're both so bad, you can't even figure out which one is worse. Did that alleviate the weak labor market fears, the recession fears that have been creeping into the market because of the war?
Yes. And I think investors need to keep in mind that wartime spending is, 30 billion and maybe going up to 100 billion a month of economic stimulus. And that does boost the economy. Gasoline, every $10 is about 4 billion to 5 billion a month hit to the consumer. So the monthly spend from the war is much higher than the effect from oil.
Yeah, that is a cynical viewpoint about war,
Yeah.
forever about war.
So, I mean, you could see Tom right there making the case that, yes, stocks are probably at a better risk reward if you think that we have bottomed so far in the context of the war. One of the stats that he mentioned, which I didn't know about, but I thought it was relatively interesting, which is that we bottomed within the first year in the stock market, at least of the beginning of World War II, which ended up going for longer than a year, obviously. And part of the reason, now it's a little bit different. We were reindustrializing factories. We were making all these weapons. It was a world war. So everyone was creating stuff and we needed a lot of artillery. So that you could say that was a natural stimulus for the broader economy. But historically, the math is on his side where we bottom in the context of a long-lasting conflict. And we don't know if this is going to be a long-lasting conflict. We are entering week 5. So Trump did say 4 to 6 weeks. We got 1 week left. And then after that, I guess you can say we are extending far beyond it. The idea that this ends in a week is hard to believe. Having said that, if we get some level of a peace deal or ceasefire anytime soon, then maybe that ends up happening. But I definitely don't think it's ending if Trump starts bombing energy infrastructure on Tuesday at 8 p.m., which, again, I think he's building up a lot of hype to ultimately not follow through and have that hype be used as max leverage. I don't know if that leverage is going to actually be useful. If he ends up actually bombing energy infrastructure, well, I guess we're going to see what that does to the Iranians. My gut tells me if the Iranian dictatorship was okay with killing protesters in the street, they're not going to be upset that energy infrastructure is hurting the lives of civilians because they don't really care about their civilians. There's 92 million people in that country. Obviously, it would not be a good thing for a lot of those people to not have energy. And if the leverage of hurting the civilians is the basis for us to negotiate with the regime, I think we just have to ask ourselves, is that the most effective way to get the job done? And if they haven't been able to capitulate or open the Strait of Hormuz for anything that we've done so far from a military perspective, is that going to be the next thing that gets them to capitulate? And if it doesn't, then I think the escalation will only, or the conflict will only deal with more escalation. So right now, I mean, we're green here, but everything that we're theorizing about in terms of how this could play out obviously would imply that we don't stay green. And I guess the market is going to have to figure out how much of this to price in or how much of this to kind of fade in terms of how they're thinking about how this is going to play out. Micron right there, that's up 3.2%. Robinhood's up 1% based on Bitcoin. Nebius is up 0.5%. SanDisk up 3%. Rocket Lab. I did buy Rocket Lab last night. In the overnight markets, bought Rocket Lab. 67.84 was the price I bought it at. Right now it's at 69. So as of now, it looks like a good buy. But if Rocket Lab goes red, then it will easily look as a bad buy. And we'll see. But simple thesis, I bought it to play the SpaceX IPO. I don't think the SpaceX $2 trillion IPO is going to be the easiest thing for retail to get access to, but I do think Rocket Lab trading at a significantly lower market cap, even though I still think Rocket Lab's expensive for the market cap that it trades at, is a way to play it. So these are not shares that I want to hold. These are shares that I want to sell. I probably want to sell them into a massive SpaceX pump if we get it. Maybe I'm dead wrong. Maybe there is no SpaceX pump that happens. And if not, then I'll hold on to the Rocket Lab. It is what it is. But yeah, I did buy some. Space seems toppy right now. I don't disagree. I some of these names, I think their valuations are kind of crazy, just like the SpaceX IPO. But, you know, if it's going to pump, it's going to pump. And I don't know, dude. 2 trillion is a lot. I wonder where that liquidity comes from. I wonder if it ends up being a sell the news event on the IPO, but it's a bet. We'll see what happens. And as of now, I will be playing it through Rocket Lab. Ironically, though, as SpaceX gets ready to IPO at 2 trillion, you got JP Morgan, which I believe is one of the underwriters on the SpaceX IPO. They just came out and they said, sell your Tesla. It's going to go down by 60%. With expectations for Tesla performance having collapsed for all financial and performance metrics across all periods through the end of the decade, the 50% rise in Tesla shares and 32% increase in analyst price targets as this collapse has taken place implies an expectation for a sharp pivot to materially better than earlier expected performance in the time beyond this decade. We advise investors cautiously approach this expectation within the context of both execution risk and the time value of money. Investors should, in our view, be mindful when assessing the implied inflection higher in Tesla performance, stating sometime beyond this decade when results are presumably expected to begin tracking materially stronger than earlier than expected, in contrast to materially weaker than earlier expected. Basically, they're saying Elon will eventually deliver the goods, but it's going to happen at some point later this decade, not now. And if you're betting on it to happen in 2027, 2028, you're likely going to be disappointed, which is why they're saying the stock could have a 60% drawdown from here. I don't think it's that easy for Tesla to have a 60% drawdown. Do I think Tesla's expensive? Of course. But do I think it's going to, decline 60%? No. I think at the end of the day, the market has to fall decisively for that to happen to Tesla. Yes, they're not growing earnings. Yes, they're not growing revenue, but obviously that hasn't been the case for 2 years, and Tesla's been able to hold on to this multiple. So I don't really think you're going to see that big of a decline, but you definitely have some people wondering, why am I not buying NVIDIA or Meta? Why am I buying Tesla when the earnings growth just isn't there right now? And until it's there, I think the market is going to be wondering how this ends up playing out. CrowdStrike, $500 million share buyback. They now have $1.5 billion on the books for buying back stock. CrowdStrike's up about 1%. Again, Anthropic has been affecting the cybersecurity names based on new security models that they've been coming out with. Microsoft as well, up 0.37%. So you got CrowdStrike adding a little bit more to their buyback. Did Trump extend the deadline again? Yes, it was supposed to end at 10:05 today Eastern. He extended it by another 34 hours. It is now 8 p.m. tomorrow, Tuesday. And I imagine we'll get either an extension or an understanding of that deadline before 8 p.m. Tuesday. But 8 p.m. Tuesday is the new deadline. He likes to keep us on our toes, and we will be awaiting what happens going into Tuesday. Here's another update on the potential mediation and ceasefire that was talked about last night.
Starting with an immediate ceasefire, then working toward a more comprehensive agreement. And while it doesn't have a specific deadline, they are apparently working to get something affirmed as soon as today. Now, the proposal reportedly comes from Egyptian, Pakistani, and Turkish mediators and includes a 45-day ceasefire along with the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. But an Iranian official said in a weekly press conference that Iran would not agree to a deal. A ceasefire means creating a pause to strengthen forces for committing crimes again, he said. No rational person would do this. Our demands, in addition to preventing a cycle of ceasefire and war, must be observed. Now, the Iranian official also suggested that the U.S. operation over the weekend to rescue a downed aviator could have been a deception for an American attempt to seize enriched uranium. And meanwhile, for his part, President Trump has extended that deadline again, threatening to blow up Iranian power plants and bridges if a deal to his liking is not reached now by 8 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, guys. And I can tell you that a White House official emailed CNBC this morning on this Iranian deadline and said, this is just, on the Pakistani proposal, and said this is just one proposal that's under discussion, and the president has not signed off on it yet. So negative signals now from both the Iranian and the U.S. side on that Pakistani mediator proposal. Back over to you.
Well, Eamon, who are they to be?
So, yeah, basically no update on any level of a ceasefire. Now, remember, the ceasefire headline, this is really important. The reason we flipped green last night is because of this Axios ceasefire headline. I mean, I know it's getting hard to keep track of which headlines do what, but that was the reason we flipped green. We were relatively flat. We started 0.5, we recovered, and then the flip to green was based on the ceasefire headline. If the ceasefire headline is not real anymore, based on the idea that the Iranians are rejecting it, then, I mean, flipping red would not be surprising, I would imagine. But, you know, as of now, we're going to see when the market opens and see how much the market cares about if this ceasefire is actually going to be true, or if it even has any chance of being true by the end of Tuesday. This was an interesting chart that I saw this morning as well. Take a look at this. This is from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. This was in January before the war started. Sorry, February 11th, before the war started. You had expectations that oil would go down to $55 this year and stay there. That didn't happen. But the expectations were so low for where oil would go. Someone says gas is $8 in California. I have seen some of those pictures. $7.50, $7.80. When I was there a couple of weeks ago, it was pushing $6.30, $6.40. In New Jersey, it's already above $4 as I've been driving around and seeing it. So, yeah, the expectation for oil to be significantly lower. I mean, now it's up double what the expectation was, and that would have been great for the airlines and the cruise lines and for consumer demand and, you know, general stimulus for the economy with oil that low, and people don't have to spend as much on different basic necessities that aren't inflated now because of the cost of oil. Unfortunately, that's just not the case. And I think that'll affect GDP to an extent. It'll obviously inflect inflation. On Wednesday, we're going to get GDP and PCE. On Thursday, we're going to get CPI. Or sorry, Friday, we get CPI. So CPI is definitely going to be super important. It will be the first CPI post the war. The expectation, guys, is 3.4%. We came in at 2.4 last month. 3.4 has taken us back to 2024 levels where we were decisively fighting it down from 7%, 8%, 9%. I actually, you know, over the weekend, I went through some of my old market opens. Actually, I can show this at the end of the show. I found the first market open with the bell. I just randomly clicked on it, and I found the first time I even introduced the bell for the first time. It's actually really funny because the way I rang it was so cringe. But that day we had CPI, and it came in at 7.2%. And we were all happy that day because it was better than it was 7.2%. And it's like, oh my goodness, we're at 7%. We were happy because we were coming down from 10%. The fact that it's now at 2.4 and we're getting ready to accelerate that back up to 3.5, it's scary, right? Because it's like, at the end of the day, how long are we going to keep fighting this war with inflation? And at what point does it come to an end? And if it doesn't come to an end, we're not going to get those rate cuts. And if we're not going to get those rate cuts, it's, you know, obviously not going to be good for stocks. So that's what we've got going on inside of the energy markets, and we'll see how the market reacts to it. We got another update on private credit. Barings Private Credit Corp will limit redemptions. Wow. You've got another one. So not only was it KKR, Apollo, and Blue Owl last week, Blue Owl was the main one. Barings Private Credit Corp will now be limiting redemptions, which essentially means people cannot take their money out of the fund. And, well, that is not the best when it comes to what could end up happening for private credit. I think Chris will be on today for, we didn't get to do Macro Thursday last week because he was busy, so he'll be on today on the close, and we'll talk a lot about private credit. It's just obviously not looking like it's in the best situation. MicroStrategy bought more Bitcoin, 4,871 Bitcoin at 67,718. So you got more BTC, that's Sailor, and MicroStrategy is scooping up. CNN right now, the Yemen Houthis say they will honor a ceasefire with the United States as long as Washington stops attacking them. A senior Houthi official said the group has no plans to target the Red Sea shipping, which is now the way that a lot of ships are getting their oil across because the Strait of Hormuz is closed, or U.S. assets until the conflict escalates. He added that they will not attack other Muslim countries until provoked. However, the senior Houthi official warned that if tensions rise, they could close another strategic strait, the Bab al-Mandab Strait. They also said Saudi Red Sea ports will not be targeted as long as Saudi Arabia avoids involvement in escalation. Okay. That is what you've got from the Houthis, which are also playing a role in everything that's going on. It's just every single hour, dude, there's something else that's affecting what you have to think about when it comes to equities. Wells Fargo, by the way, has priced in 0 Fed rate cuts. Wells Fargo Investment Institute expects the U.S. Fed to keep interest rates unchanged in 2026 versus the prior forecast of 2 rate cuts going into this year. All right, so no rate cuts from Wells Fargo. Could that be stagflationary? Yeah, I mean, eventually it could. Eventually it could. And that would not be the best. Energy sector downgraded at Wells Fargo as well. For the S&P 500, IT sector upgraded. Well, tech, this is a really interesting chart. Tech earnings are now expected. Well, not tech, S&P 500 earnings, but the majority of that in terms of the increase being technology. It's expected to be $323 a share. But the S&P multiple continues to compress. Now, one could argue that the S&P was already overvalued, so we're growing into the multiple, which means we're not going to go up, we're not going to go down, we're going to stay flat, which might be the best case. But the point is we are seeing the multiple increase or the multiple decrease as the earnings expectations are up by 4% since January 1st. And then take a look at this. U.S. tech stocks are actually cheaper than European stocks on a price to earnings growth ratio basis, on a PEG ratio, which is incredible. We're at 1.5. European stocks are at 1.6. I mean, the fact that U.S. stocks, tech stocks, these are supposed to be the most important companies in the world that have the best profit margins and the highest levels of liquidity. The fact that they are trading lower than the European tech stocks is just incredible. But that's what's happening right now. That's how much U.S. tech stocks are on sale and how much the market might be avoiding them, just given everything that's going on in the United States. Sham Sanker was just on the All In podcast. Okay, so this is really cool. They just posted it. Sham and Trey Stevens from Anduril were on All In, so we'll get some probably good clips from that soon. And we'll be able to see some of the stuff that Sham is saying. Bitcoin right there, 69,415. S&P at 655. On the poll, let me pull this up. I think a decent chunk of you are not excited about this green. 45% say we're going to flip to red. 33% we get more green. 22% of you guys say we will be flat. I don't think it's that crazy to imagine we end up flipping red, to be honest. If we somehow get a surge of green, it's the market really pricing in that Tuesday is not going to be as bad for what might be anticipated. Someone says right here, if you don't know about the Bab al-Mandab route, it is responsible for 10%. Wow, that is interesting. It is responsible for 10% of global shipping passes. Okay, so that's probably why the Houthis mentioned it as their next thing. The Red Sea port is the strait that a lot of ships are diverging their attention from. Here's a chart on that I showed last night. It's also really important to look at. I mean, you're just starting to see the activity in the Strait of Hormuz really die down since the war has begun, but you're seeing a very small amount of that activity pop back up, and that's like the 10 or 15 out of the 150 ships that usually used to pass every day that are being approved by the Iranians. And that's why a lot of those ships are going through different routes, particularly the Red Sea, as a way to combat what's currently happening there. Gas prices, $4.10 is your average. Diesel's at $5.58. That is another problem with expectations around inflation coming down. Obviously, if energy continues to go up, inflation expectations go up. And then Kevin Warsh is going to have a very complicated situation on his hand because he's going to have to get these prices to come down in order to justify any level of a rate cut. This is the, as you can see, Middle East oil product exports sinking on the Strait of Hormuz being closed. You can see February versus March. I mean, I don't know how Kevin Walsh is going to cut rates in a world in which inflation stays at these levels. We need to like stop the war today to have a chance for oil to come down in any meaningful way, for inflation and CPI, PCE, all the stuff the Fed cares about, to not have that factored in going into the summer. If we stay at these levels for the next even month, I would imagine the summer is going to be ruined in terms of inflation actually coming down, because the lagging effects of oil will still be out there. And then you have, the tax refunds coming in, which could potentially be more stimulus. If the labor market doesn't necessarily collapse, you have more stimulus. I mean, you just have a lot of catalysts for inflation, which it shouldn't necessarily affect earnings that badly. If anything, it should actually increase earnings because companies would be raising prices. But if consumers don't have the money to pay for that stuff, the Q's right there, up 0.33% in the pre-market. That's another thing that everyone's going to have to be trying to navigate as well. That's what we got. That is what we got as we get into it. So far, yes, the covered call has been working. We have not had that face ripper rally yet. Eventually, I think it will happen, but it might take a lot of time to get there. And until then, we're going to see, if the market gives you the ability to actually see that the dip is rewarded when you buy it. Sam Altman, OpenAI. So we talked about last week, they acquired a media company, TBPN. A couple of updates from them. First of all, their cap table was leaked, and nothing that different that we didn't already know. Microsoft turned $13 billion into $222 billion. You have the nonprofit that owns about $220 billion of it as well. Ashton Kutcher and his VC fund turned $30 million into $1.3 billion. So hell of a return for Ashton Kutcher and those early angels. But they put out these two statements today that I thought were really interesting. OpenAI says the United States should create a public wealth fund. Create a public wealth fund that provides every citizen, including those not invested in financial markets, with a stake in AI-driven economic growth. And they said we have to accelerate grid expansion. These are kind of their two recommendations for the United States. We should establish a new public-private partnership model to finance and accelerate the expansion of energy infrastructure required to power AI, and use these models to address financing constraints, permitting delays, and sitting risks that have limited high-voltage interstate and interregional transmissions. I think the public wealth fund makes sense. And Sam Altman, not even Sam Altman, Trump wanted to initiate the idea last year with Lutnick. But then Trump kind of joked, and they realized they have way too much debt to pay off, so they can't start a public wealth fund. And, the United States already has a lot of wealth. And the reason Saudi Arabia does it is because they don't have the same type of tech company. So they use that wealth fund to invest in United States companies. So I don't know if a wealth fund would be started. But essentially, OpenAI is saying the government should own part of OpenAI as a way to kind of backstop liquidity. So it's interesting. And then obviously increasing the grid, which would also be very good for energy infrastructure. All the stuff that you would think needs to happen in order for AI to accelerate is what they're claiming. And, it's nothing too different from what they've asked before. All right, we got 30 seconds. Let's see how this market opens up. We still got a bunch of different headlines. So far, it looks like we are already going a little red 20 seconds before it opens. Maybe that flip greens. Maybe that could flip green, or maybe that stays down. Yeah, Micron was up 4. Now it's up 1.8. Bitcoin losing some steam. Let's see if any of these headlines impact the markets to the upside, or if we continue seeing the flip-flopping nature of the choppiness of this market. Monday, April 6th, 9:30 a.m. The stock market is now open. All right, wake your ass up. Let's get into it. S&P 656. We are slightly green, ever so slightly, but we are green. The VIX is up 5%, which isn't the best to assume that this momentum can continue, but VIX is up 5, and oil is still pushing 110. CrowdStrike at 402, that's green. The Qs are up. Air Test Systems, that's up 3.15%. They have earnings tomorrow after the bell. The Qs are up 0.42%. Nike up 0.2% after falling 15% last week. Grab is up 1.2%. Seed Limited is up 1%. MicroStrategy up 3.4%. Bitcoin 69.5%. Robinhood below 70, but still green, up 1.1%. 69.6. Coinbase up 2.4% on Bitcoin. Micron 372. Micron was pushing 380 in the pre-markets, but we're up 372. That's at 2.1%. Tesla 365. Even with the JP Morgan sell rating that was initiated today, you are green. Netflix got an upgrade by Goldman Sachs to 120. Netflix 102. This is actually a really big retail-owned stock. It is one of the top 10 stocks owned on Robinhood. So a lot of retail is piled into Netflix, especially during the Warner Brothers, Paramount Sky negotiations. So it looks like that Goldman rating to 120 is getting the street more excited. 4% move. We have not had a 4% move on Netflix in a while, especially just based on an upgrade. So Netflix right there, 102.50. Google, 296, almost back to 300. ASTS, 93.20. Rocket Lab trying to push 68. We're back at 67.80. That's up 0.10%. So it gave back a lot of that pre-market pump that it had, similar to some of the other space names as well. Duolingo, that's up 1.7. ARM is up 1.2. VIX is now only up 4%. It was up 6. NVIDIA, are we dipping? NVIDIA is, down 10 cents, 177.20. Not crazy, but it is down. AMD, what's the reason for this pump? 3%. I don't know if there's an upgrade here or a headline, but AMD getting some love. It seems like the semiconductor name of choice for the day. 224 on AMD. That one continues to be green. Netflix continues to be green. Where is Palantir? Palantir is at 149.93. Palantir almost back up to 150, up about 1%. Silver is up. Gold is up. Copper is up. Zeta is up. IGV and software is slightly up, 80.20. Gave back a lot of the gains that it got in March after bottoming in February. We still have not hit that low, 70. Oh, no, we did. We hit like 77 in February. We hit 76.61 March 27. So since then, we are still lower from there. S&P 656, but IGV not making that big of a move. Microsoft is at 372. Microsoft goes red again. Microsoft goes red again, as that one has not really switched up its narrative. Intel is green again, 52.20, up 3.5%. Again, Intel bought back $14 billion of their debt last week. I don't know if that was that bullish. I feel like there's a different reason why Intel's swinging higher. Same with AMD. But I guess buying back some of that old debt definitely wasn't a bad thing. Intel right there holding on to its momentum. Did Bookings announce a 25-for-1 stock split? Oh, yeah, they did. Oh, this was announced a while ago. I think they did it officially today, right? This is when the split actually went into effect. This was like a $5,000 stock. So nice to see that that's actually, yeah, okay, that is official today. That is official. Actually, it happened April 2nd. It happened April 2nd. We're seeing it today. All right, so there you go. Bookings right there, 169.43 as that has split. Palantir back above 150. SPY, 657, high of day. At least for the first 4 minutes in, we're opening. Kratos got an upgrade this morning as well. That's why they're pumping 5%. A lot of the drone stocks, well, the other reason the drone stocks could be getting a bid, Kratos up 7% now. Ondas up 1.4. Red Cat is up as well. Trump, which he might talk about today in his 1 p.m. address, is unveiling a $1.5 trillion budget plan for fiscal year 2027. I don't know if he's going to talk about it today, but that has been floated around. AMD still moving here, high of day 225.20, and that's good for all the drone stocks. That's also good for Rocket Lab, as they're a defense contractor. Great for SpaceX, great for Palantir, Lockheed, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, L3 Harris, etc. So, I mean, that could be a natural bid up for the drone names. Space coming back to life right there. ASTS now up 4, Rocket Lab up 2, Lunar, which had a massive day last week. That one's flat, 23.69, but it broke out from that 1850 range it was stuck at. BMNR bought another 71,000 ETH. They now have basically 4% of the entire supply of Ethereum. So they are still looking for that 5%, and they are getting close to that. Nubank right there, 1.63%. That is green. CoreWeave goes red. Nebius goes the opposite, 2% up. Iren also 2% up. So Nebius and Iren going in one direction as CoreWeave going down. Amit, why is Tesla up if it should be down for JP Morgan's downgrade? So again, I mean, the banks only have so much control, right? So JP Morgan can put out a report saying that we think Tesla's going to fall 60%. But if people don't believe it, then people don't believe it. And so, you know, whenever you get a downgrade on a name like Tesla, you really have to take it with a grain of salt, because analysts have been downgraded this name for the past 10 years. And it's, you know, been flat over the past 5 years, has not made that big of a move, but or at least relative to other names and indices. But it's held on. It's not collapsed to like $20 like a Gordon Johnson would say. So seeing Tesla go up after JP Morgan says sell it, not that impossible to believe. ASTS right there up 5%. APLD is also up 6%. Where is SoFi, which unveiled business banking last week? SoFi up 2%. 1620 on the day. Iran will respond forcefully to the targeting of the Masher facilities and seek compensation. Several Indian, Pakistani, Turkish, and French ships have already received passage permits. So again, we have that headline this morning that a petrochemical plant in Iran has been attacked, apparently from the United States and Israel this morning. And it seems like that is not something the Iranians are happy about. Also, Iran tells Al Jazeera, Iran will allow ships from some friendly nations to pass through the Strait of Hormuz in exchange for security fees. Based on a decision by top state institution, Iran intends to obtain war compensation through these fees. I believe the fees, based on what I was reading over the weekend, is $1 a barrel. $1 a barrel. So if you have, 1 million barrels on your ship, you'd be paying $1 million to get that ship through the Strait of Hormuz. And I guess that's how Iran intends to finance some of the stuff going on. NVIDIA goes red. Wow, NVIDIA dumping, AMD pumping. SPY, do we go red? Oh, SPY is pretty close to going red. SPY is pretty close. AMD is still holding on like a champ, 224.60. If AMD goes red, then we'll see, I guess, the entire market reacting to this. So far, individual stocks are holding up. OSS, that's up 3%. Google, up 0.23. Lemonade is up 1%. Zeta just went red. Gold just went red. Robinhood Ventures just went red. TQQQ is up a little bit on the day. Altria Group's up a little bit. Oscar still at $12. That's green. The broader S&P is now 4 cents away from flipping red. There you go. There's your red flip. And let's see if it stays there. This is what happened on Thursday until we reversed. I mean, every single day, minute by minute, you kind of monitor how the headlines affect this stuff. The space name's still holding on to a little bit of their momentum as well. There is VG. That is VG you would think would be up a lot more, quite frankly. It's not. It was pushing 18 last week. Crude's back at 112. Okay, so that decline on crude barely lasted. It was at 110 for a little bit. Now it's back at 112. It was at 114 last night. As that one goes down. Netflix stock rises above 100 due to price increases, growth in ad revenue, and expansion into live sports. Yeah, the price increases that they announced last week is what I think Goldman also upgraded them on. I mean, look, the thing about Netflix is they don't have the juicy type of content that they were going to get with Warner Brothers, but they also don't have to pay $90 billion to get it. So at the end of the day, if they can figure out the content problem without having to spend that much money, I would imagine it's bullish, even though it trades at a premium valuation. This thing is likely not getting back to those lows that it was at when, the street thought they were going to pay as much money. That's what, Netflix was a perfect example of the prediction markets really providing alpha, because the prediction markets were providing in real time the probabilities of Netflix buying Warner Brothers or not. And as soon as the prediction markets flipped to Netflix was not going to buy them, the stock wasn't at the lows, but it was still at a level where there was upside if you went in heavy. I mean, even if you went in heavy at like 87 instead of 77, you still made a decent return. And so ultimately them not getting that deal was the most important. S&P back to 656. I did start a new show on Netflix. I watched the entire season already, the entire first season. I did start a new show on Netflix. You guys are probably not going to be happy with the show I started, but I did start a new show. And quite frankly, I'm hooked on it again. It's a show I watched a while ago. It's been a long time. And it's more of a background, just something you play in the background. You don't have to literally be watching every single second of it. But I have picked my new show. Why is NVIDIA tanking? NVIDIA getting it. It's not really tanking. I'm being dramatic. But 176.50. No, it's not Grey's Anatomy. I'm done with that, dude. That was only fun for like 3 seasons. I don't know how they made 20 seasons out of that shit, dude. It got boring as hell after season 4. Euphoria is not on Netflix. That's HBO Max. It's not Dawson's Creek, okay? I've already watched it twice. Not going to watch it a third time. It's not Breaking Bad. It's not You. I'm afraid to say it. I'm afraid to say it. Nevius of 1.7. I started Scandal again. Okay. I started Scandal. Kerry Washington. Beautiful. I mean, it's just one of those shows, right? It's just one of like, I haven't watched this thing since 2013. It's been a minute. It's been a freaking minute. And it's about the White House and all the crazy stuff happening in the White House. I mean, it's kind of relatable to what's happening today to an extent. I started Scandal. It's a good show, dude. It's a good freaking show. It's a decent show. So I don't know when it gets bad. I think like by season 3, season 4, it gets bad. But season 1 has been pretty exciting. Ondas right there, up 3%. Zoe says, my wife just finished the whole season. That's crazy. Yeah, I think Netflix just added it like a couple months ago. That's the thing about Netflix, dude. They'll put something in your face and then you just end up clicking because it's there. That's the power that Netflix has. It's just they put so little few things in your face that are interesting to watch, at least from my perspective. But Scandal, they got me into again. All right, let's see what other headlines we got. Grab somehow green on the day. Again, the rising oil prices are not good for Grab. They're not good for Sea Limited. They're not good for any of the companies internationally. So I'm surprised this one's going green. I think it's because the dollar is down today. Where's the Dixie? The Dixie is down 99.86. Okay, so maybe that's having an inverse impact on some of these international names. Take a look at this, by the way. I thought this was super interesting. I have not done this yet, but someone posted that Gemini is now using screen automation for you to do stuff. So you could say, order my usual at Starbucks. Gemini goes through your Starbucks app, goes through, essentially deploys agents. And as you can see right there, it makes the order for you. And then you can just go and pick it up at your local Starbucks. So I thought this was actually really cool and is the first sign of like agentic LLMs incorporating with the products that we use every day or the restaurants we eat at every day, like a Starbucks. And I think if Siri kind of crushes it on the ability for them to really implement that at scale, that is your bull case for Apple. AppLovin is up 7%. That came in just now. That pumped. Doesn't OpenClaw and Claude do this already? Yes, but again, I think a lot of people are not going to be buying Mac Minis and building stuff. I mean, they just want their LLM to do it for them. Like, you know, the billions of people that eventually will adopt AI just want to be able to type something into Siri or to Gemini or to ChatGPT and have it get done. And right now, there's not that many use cases of those companies being able to do it internally without, needing extra help. So I think that's where you have your massive use case coming in. AppLovin, I don't see the headline here, but that's a nice 7% move. We had a couple headlines last week around their collaboration with OpenAI that was helping them. Are you still in OSS? Yes, still in OSS. Earnings were actually really good for them. But again, they are a small cap here. I don't see anything for AppLovin. I don't see any upgrade. I don't see anything. That's a really random move. That's up 6% right there. NVIDIA's still red. S&P flip green again. SoFi actually getting a 3% move right here, which is nice. So you're seeing SoFi get some momentum. SoundHound is also up 2.43%. Seeing a lot of these smaller AI names get some green. Oracle's about to flip green. Amazon up another 1%. Blue Owl still down. Meta 580. This thing was at 520 a couple weeks ago, which not even a couple weeks ago, a couple days ago. So it's nice to see that changing. I think Affirm is also flipping great. Wow. So space, look at Affirm, 6%. Space and fintech and advertising names are kind of your core sectors today. Memory as well, getting some love. Micron back to 380. You had some really good updates from some of the sell side talking about DRAM prices and essentially, the same bull case for the memory names being reiterated. I think Goldman put Seagate above Western Digital as their one of their top picks. Seagate right there. Wow, 8% on the day. Memory absolutely making a comeback here. Western up 4%. Will that hold is the question. Yeah, HUD's actually not moving with the other fintechs. SoFi and Affirm. HUD's actually flipping slightly red here, or it's about to. But you're seeing a SoFi now. Again, SoFi, one could argue, was a bit oversold. That's getting some love finally. And same thing with Affirm. Up 6.62%. Tanner just posted traffic for the fintechs. Let me pull up his tweet. I imagine for SoFi, it's probably good. Okay, so let's take a look at what he posted. So this is SoFi traffic. We are at, yeah, it looks like all-time high for SoFi. For Robinhood, it is not an all-time high. All-time high was October 2025, but it's still relatively high. Upstart looks like all-time high. And then Chime, all-time high. Okay, so at least the fintechs saw some pretty good activity in March. Chime is also up 2% right there. SoFi being the one that matters the most given how sold off they've been. If users and activity continues to be pretty robust, they're going to put up 35 to 40% growth again. And if they do, I mean, I wonder how much the market is going to care about the LPB issues that they've had for a while. NVIDIA trying to flip green and join the party. NVIDIA is still red. HIMS, are we trying today? HIMS is trying to get back to 20, up 4%. I asked last night, you can put it in the chat, I asked who thinks we've bottomed. 70% of you said no, we have not bottomed. So I'll ask the same question. I mean, do people think we bottomed at all? That bottom was S&P 630.5 last Monday, which would have essentially, sorry, we touched 629, so you call it 630, on March 30th. And since then, we've rallied up to 657. I mean, for us to go back down there all the way again, it's obviously very possible, but it would be very painful because, I mean, talking about NVIDIA back to 160, Rocket Lab back into the 50s, Meta back to below, close to below 500. I mean, Meta got to 520. It was $20 away. Debius got to 90. You would see price action get hit pretty hard again if that takes place. CoreWeave insiders sold 150 million in shares. Well, that could definitely explain CoreWeave being down 2.23. And Nebius and Iran going the opposite direction. I think we bottomed before the next Trump tweet. Well, that's the other question. What is Trump going to say today? He's going to be live at 1 p.m. And I am not sure exactly what he's going to say there at 1 p.m. Would you buy more BMNR if it reaches 5% Alchemy? No. I mean, again, crypto is stuck in a structural issue right now. And the 5% Alchemy to me is irrelevant. I mean, it's just like Saylor owning almost 1% of all Bitcoin. It's not really helping Bitcoin go up. So until I think crypto is out of the woods, which as of right now, it's stuck in it, which means you'll have to buy it higher, which I'm okay with, knowing that you have more confirmation. Micron right there, almost 385. It's up 5%. But I just don't see how crypto has a good rest of the year if we don't get rate cuts, which is why I'm surprised we're even front running any level of momentum here. Like if we're not getting cuts, and forget if, or even if the war were to end today, if we still have way too much inflation in the system to easily justify a rate cut, you need liquidity for crypto. Like it's not that complicated. So if we don't have liquidity, I don't know. Maybe this is a consolidation year for crypto versus a breakout year like last year was. NVIDIA 177. This one's trying to flip green again. We also need the Clarity Act. That is correct. That would help to get things moving in the right direction. S&P, we hit 657.20. We aren't red anymore. There's a lot of liquidity on the sideline. That is fair, but remember, if we're not getting rate cuts, that's 7.8 trillion in money markets that are collecting about 3.5%. And the S&P has not even given you 3.5% this year. So to them, really, I mean, it's just like logically, money tends to leave the sidelines or the high yield savings accounts and go into risk on assets when FOMO starts to occur. I mean, very few people are easy at or are easily persuaded by buying things when they're cheap and getting them before they go up, right? Most people, including myself, tend to FOMO in. Like that's just the natural nature of markets. And so if the S&P is not even giving you 3.5% this year, but your money market fund has, and you're sitting on real wealth that you want to protect, the idea that you would take a risk and speculate into something like crypto, it's just not likely until rates come down, until you're getting 3% or 2.5% from your risk-free money market funds. Netflix right there back above 100. So until that happens, which would need rate cuts, it's going to be hard to see liquidity easily increasing. And also, Kevin Warsh is not a fan of quantitative easing. He's actually strictly against QE. So I'm not sure if he's going to kind of buy up bonds and help the market weather through this. UNH as well, 280. As that is green. My high yield savings is beating the S&P. I mean, everyone's, if you're getting at least 3.5% or 4% in a savings account, so far the S&P is down 3.5% this year. I mean, we've been only used to the S&P going up for the past couple of years, even in the midst of these drawdowns. And these drawdowns have lasted no more than like a month, maybe a month and a half, which we're still in that same time frame right now on this one. But if we were to have another year where the S&P doesn't return, then cash would not necessarily be the worst. It is a midterm year. That's something I have to remember. We all have to remember. Something happens in the midterm year. It's happened historically for the past 50 years. We saw it last time with 2022. Something during those midterm, we don't have to have another 20% decline, but there's something that happens during that midterm year that just makes it tougher for stocks to do as well. And so far, we are feeling it. Air Test Systems, 52-week high. That one has earnings tomorrow. It's up 9% today. Again, it is a small cap. Lots of hyperscaler orders coming in on this. I would imagine earnings are going to be good. I just wonder if it's run too much going into earnings, or if earnings re-rates the stock completely and it has an even bigger a bigger move to the upside. It's up 119% now year to date as that continues going green. VIX is... Where is the VIX? Only up 2%. Only up 2%. Did you start position in Zeta? I've had Zeta for a while. So yes, I am in Zeta. I've not bought anything new in my retirement account yet. So still have that 35 grand just waiting there. And I mean, I kind of want to see what happens on Tuesday. I mean, Trump keeps giving these arbitrary deadlines. And so as a market participant, I'm like, okay, let's see what happens on Tuesday, 8 p.m. now. And if he tacos again and we get a little bit more V-shape, and maybe we have to buy higher, but at least we have more confirmation. Or if he actually starts bombing energy infrastructure in Iran, which I would imagine the market would not be happy about. Right now, the market is pricing in that that's not going to happen. At least that's what it feels like. Because why would the market be up if they thought Trump was going to severely hurt civilian energy infrastructure in Iran? S&P going for 658. She's trying. She is trying. That would be higher than what we got last Thursday. That would be a big one if we can get above it. So the market's calling the bluff. At least that's what it feels like. Trump conference is at 1 p.m. Yes, I'll be live at 1 p.m. We'll be talking at 1 p.m. Micron right here, 384. Micron getting a nice big move up here as well. This thing was at 318 last week. Amcor, that's up 3.45%. AAOI is up 5.2. Bloom Energy is up 2. ServiceNow is up 0.5%. And then NEO is up 1.4% as well. Volume's pretty high. S&P 5 million shares in the first 20 minutes. Let's pull up the heat map. Yeah, volume's not an issue. Seems like we have a decent chunk of it coming in, or at least what should be happening. Yeah, look at the heat map, dude. We are pretty green across the board. Google potentially trying to break 300. I mean, we are red in some of these industrial healthcare areas. Some of the tech names are red, like a Broadcom. But everything else is pretty green. Israeli army, we bombed dozens of aircrafts and helicopters and military infrastructure in 3 airports in Tehran. IDF says we've struck dozens of Iranian Air Force planes in Tehran. Okay, that's obviously not necessarily the best for negotiations, but market seems to not care. It either feels like this move that we're seeing is fully fake, because all I've read are ugly headlines this morning, which would assume the opposite of green would be showing up. But we are seeing more green than not in the midst of these headlines. By the way, AppLovin was upgraded by Wedbush to 560. So that's likely why they're getting that move as they're going green on the day. Yeah, daily escalation. Well, you know, one thing is maybe, I mean, to an extent, the market could be normalizing the escalation. The market is really good at pricing in a bunch of stuff, and we'll get PMI in 5 minutes. Maybe the market's just pricing in the escalation and saying, all right, we think every day as this continues, it doesn't incrementally affect the residual impact of the escalation is not going to be that much worse for crude, given, you know, it's priced in now at this point. You know, maybe it's not. Maybe crude's going to 130, which would be worse. But if it is priced in to an extent, then maybe the market can overlook it. Maybe. At least that's what it feels like the market's doing right here. Fubo had an update this morning as well. They increased their EBITDA outlook, targeting $300 million by 2028. Fubo is up 18%, I believe, after they did their reverse split. They're guiding to $100 million of adjusted EBITDA in 26 and $300 million by 2028. Expects positive free cash flow starting in 2027. Fubo, nice little move right there, up 18%. How much is Fubo up year to date? I know this one has obviously been through some issues. Year to date, it is still down 62%. Okay. So still pretty ugly. Over the past year, down 65%, but at least for today, it is up 18 on this new EBITDA guidance. Are you in Next? No, I'm not in Next. Is Next moving right here? Next is up a little bit right now. 658 S&P. There you go. You got it. We get PMI in a couple minutes. Let's see if that holds up. PMI, we're expecting 55 on, or 54 on services PMI. Previous was 56.1. So above 54 likely would be bullish. The bad headlines are part of negotiating. Oh my gosh. I guess so. I guess so. This is just every day. There's something new here. The Ministry of Intelligence of the Islamic Republic of Iran says some of these traders were sending information about certain defense facilities in the West to a hub based in the USA, as well as locations of military and law enforcement forces in this province to the intelligence service. Wow. So Iran accusing some of their people of sending classified intelligence to the United States. Yeah, that's probably not going to be the best for those people in Iran. Trump did have some ground troops on the ground in Iran this weekend. We found the ejected pilot who, as the plane got hit, had to eject himself. And I think there were about 100 ground troops in Iran to rescue him. And that he did get rescued, I think, in Saturday afternoon, which was a good thing. But we officially have had ground troops in Iran, even if they weren't directly in combat, for this military operation to recover this pilot. They were indeed in Iran themselves. 658.06 S&P. 658.06 S&P. Do we think the market will love seeing 1% jump on CPI? Well, here's the thing. If the expectation is for a 3.5% print on CPI, why is the market pumping right now? Right? Like, the market knows that. The market's not dumb. They know that CPI is going to be way higher than expected. So even with that print, it feels like it's being priced in. A lot of stuff feels like it's being priced in right here. And either it's all fake, but you're getting a hell of a move right there, or it's not. Up. Did we get PMI? We got a red candle right now. 54. 54 on PMI. The street wanted 54. We came in at 54, so it was not a beat. That red candle now going back to green a little bit. Business activity, street wanted 58. We came in at 53.9. That is a miss. Previous was 60. Employment, street wanted 51.7. Wow, we came in at 45.2. Okay, that's actually ugly. Market doesn't care. 659. That's an ugly miss on unemployment. 659 right there. Yeah, highest prices paid since October 2022 on ISM services. We'll pull up those numbers in just a second. Wow, that was 657 all the way to 659, right back up to 658. And that's probably what caused a lot of these different stocks to take a bit of a move as well. Also, you have ISM service prices at 70.7. Last one was 63. New orders was at 60.6. Expectation was 57.6. So you've got some pretty ugly misses in terms of pricing and employment, which is obviously bad for inflation and bad for the labor market. But you do have at least a beat on the first metric, or at least in line with expectations with global PMI in general.
That would be the slightest, the weakest since just January this year when we were at 53.8. We were expecting a number closer to 55, sequentially lower than 56.1. Prices paid. We'd really rather have this go down. This is not only the 16th reading that is above 60. This one is above 70, 70.7. We're expecting 67. This would equal where we were in October of 22. To find a higher number, you're going back to August of 22. Now, let's look at new orders. Expecting a number right below 57. Comes in strong, 60.6. That would be the strongest since Feb of 23, sequentially higher than 58.6. And finally, on the employment side, and this is after we had the jobs report Friday with better showing on non-farm payrolls, comes in light, 45.2, expecting a number at 51. Last look was 51.8. 45.2 would be the weakest going back to December of 23. So we do see prices paid moving the wrong way. Lots of weakness here on the service side. Interest rates, well, they're under a little bit of pressure. If you look at the maturities from 7-year out to 30s, yields a bit lower, slightly higher 2s, 3s, and 5s. Sarah, back to you.
Okay, Rick, thank you very much. We're going to kick off the hour and the week with some breaking news here on the Trump accounts. So we can now officially confirm that Treasury has chosen BNY, Bank of New York Mellon, to manage the Trump accounts. It's also selecting Robinhood.
Wow. Okay. This is the announcement that Hood has been waiting for a long time. Stock's not really pumping on this, but it looks like Hood and BNY will be taking over a decent chunk of these Trump accounts.
To help as well. It's a big deal because this was a competitive process. Part of the job here is designing and creating an app for people to track their accounts. Remember, these Trump accounts, they're now law, where anyone with a baby born after January of last year can apply starting this tax season, and there have already been millions of applications, to receive $1,000 in an S&P 500 index fund that kids can access starting at 18 years old. Treasury's been running this process to pick which financial institution will be able to manage them, and I'm told it was competitive, but in the end, BNY won, and they will officially be contracted by the Treasury. There's no performance fees here. It's more just bragging rights and sort of soft marketing and also those contracting fees. And it kind of fits with the America 250 theme. BNY is America's oldest bank, founded by Alexander Hamilton. It was actually the first company listed on the New York Stock Exchange. BNY CEO Robin Vince telling us, in part, this will help more Americans invest in our economy, strengthen U.S. capital markets, and give more children a foundation for long-term financial security. That's what the administration's trying to do here. Guys, the app should be live by July 4th. At least the accounts should be live. And I'm told it's not just going to be a sort of boring brokerage app. They're really trying to design it to get kids to learn and engage. Treasury Secretary Besson kicked off Financial Literacy Month this month. And this is the ultimate aim here, to bring people into the system, to teach them about the markets, to teach them about finance, to give them a stake, maybe to help fight, the rise and the allure of socialism here by making them part of the system. And it is all happening as part of tax filing season.
The rise and allure of socialism.
Well, right, that we've seen that in all the polls. By the way, also some breaking news here. On tax day, April 15th, our Invest in America Summit is taking place, and Treasury Secretary Besson will be headlining it. This is the CNBC event that looks at businesses investing in America, and I think takes on an interesting angle here on tax day. And when we're expecting, we know that refunds are running 10% above last year, and we're expecting millions more signups of these Trump accounts. 4 million already, about halfway through the season.
And everybody's got to do it. There's no doubt about that. And you've had a lot of philanthropists sign on, obviously Michael Dell most prominently, but many others as well, because it's not just the 1,000, but really what makes it even more compelling is the opportunity for it to be added to by any number of
Corporations?
your own corporation.
Corporations are doing it for their
I
employees.
mean,
for
I
the
think
kids.
Druckenmiller is doing it up, you
Yep.
know, something uptown as well, in terms of kids at school when they get A's.
I mean, look, I'm a fan of the Trump accounts. I think it makes sense. I don't think this is going to change the earnings projections for Hood. I mean, right now it's based on trading volumes, and retail sentiment has died down pretty heavily in March because of this war. So if the war ends and we get a V shape, I think that sentiment comes back. But it's good for Hood to be included in this for the long-term trajectory of what they're doing with the U.S. and being a catalyst for these accounts that I think will last long after Trump is not president anymore, and be something that can get more kids into the market. But the immediate effect is not going to change their earnings, especially if they're not even collecting any fees on this right now. So I'm not sure if that's going to be a big pump at the moment, but it is good to see them being included in this. S&P losing a lot of its steam, folks. We were at 659.70. Look at that red candle, right back down to 656.70. So you're not really seeing a ton of excitement right there, at least on the breakout, but we are still up a little bit on the day. 0.1%. Damn, we were up almost 1%. Now we're up 0.1%. Just as quick as it comes is as quick as it goes. Even Micron was pushing 385, right back down to 377. It also shows Hood's retail appeal. Yeah, that is also fair. And again, I think, a lot of kids will probably like using Hood over the other apps to set up their Trump accounts. So long term, if Hood's able to get a decent amount of these counts, it's going to be more AUM that they're getting basically for free. The government's giving all these kids $1,000 and it'll just compound over time. But the question is going to be monetizing that in the short term, which as of now likely is not happening that easily. Adobe 245, that's also green. Tesla, did we go below 360? Wow, Tesla was at almost 370 today, flipped red. AAOI was up 12%. Now it's up 1%. I mean, it's the story of a lot of stocks, right? They opened green, even sustained that green. We're about 40 minutes in, and then they lose a decent chunk of their pump. Even Intel was up more. Microsoft right here at 372. Palantir was at 150. That goes red. Rocket Lab losing from the 69 highs that it was also at. Yeah, once again, choppy price action. Meta right there from 589 to 577. The UK ISA reset is happening today. Do you think a lot of buying may be coming from the UK? I am not fully up to date on exactly how the ISA in the United Kingdom works, but in general, a couple of days ago, you had 401ks that bought every 2 weeks, the 1st and the 15th. You have more money coming to the market. I mean, look, it is a theory that retirement accounts every couple of weeks buy, and people spend money and they just buy the index, and that creates some liquidity, which is fair. I just think this market overall has become so algorithmic that even that is already priced in. It's factored in. The market knows exactly what dates to expect a lot of liquidity. The options market reflects that many times. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't know if the retirement accounts bringing more money into the economy or bringing more money to the stock market necessarily results in a jolt or a boost. Like you saw the PMI data take the S&P from 659 to 656 within seconds. At this point, it just feels like there are so many more factors controlling price action versus an injection of liquidity from retirement accounts. NVIDIA flipping red again on the day, 176.30. Did you spend any of your $35,000? No. I bought some Rocket Lab last night in my regular brokerage, so I did buy a little bit of this quote-unquote dip. But, dude, now I want to see what happens on Tuesday, 8 p.m. Trump is giving all these deadlines. I was like, all right, let's see. Because at Tuesday, 8 p.m., if shit hits the fan and we start going down, I'm going to feel pretty dumb for allocating a ton of capital right before. Then again, if Tuesday, 8 p.m. is amazing and we V-shape, I'm not that afraid of buying into strength. Like it's not like my philosophy is not to try to get the bottom on it. I just want more confirmation when I'm buying. And last year, it was easy to get confirmation because none of us believed that those reciprocal tariffs would last. So we kind of got to get the bottom and have confirmation at the same time, the confirmation being our gut telling us that Zimbabwe is not going to pay 85% tariffs. But this time is just a fundamentally different dynamic with what's happening with the war. You cannot time the market. That is true. But you can definitely wait a little bit to get some more clarity on what's happening in the market. By the way, BlackRock is launching a competitor to the QQQ. IQQQ. It's not out yet, but oh no, it is. Is it? Oh no, that's a different one. They're launching a NASDAQ competitor, which I think is a great idea because, to be honest, the QQQ is filled with a lot of junk, and it's part of the reason I don't buy it. So I wonder if they're coming up with a competitor that's way better than the overall tech ETF. So I think that's going to be out soon in the coming week or two, and we'll see what it looks like. We are kind of reversing. Yes, we are reversing a little bit right here. 657.30 on the S&P. What's the fee? That's a good question. I don't have that yet. I imagine the expense ratio is not going to be as aggressive as it was before, or as it is for the Qs. Where's IBIT? I mean, IBIT, where is the flows on IBIT? It's at 39.30. IBIT flows, have they picked up even a little bit? Wow, these are so bad, dude. These are disgusting. $9 million it got on Friday. It lost 173 on Wednesday. It's just either $100 million red days or a little bit of green. $8 million, $9 million, $80 million. I mean, the Bitcoin ETFs are just cooked right here. They have 63 billion in assets. This thing has not grown substantially over the past year. Fees yet to be disclosed. All right, so we'll wait. All right, so we're going to see. As of now, BTC not really getting the momentum that the street has been, or that crypto has been hoping for. Robin right there, 69.50, not really getting a pump based on that news with BNY. Air Test Systems, 14% move right here. It's obviously being pumped in anticipation of earnings. They've got to deliver now on earnings for this thing to kind of hold up at these levels. But that one making a hell of a move. HIMS right there is up 4%. Next Decade up 2%. And Tesla's still at 358. What about QQQM? This is QQQM. Is this the covered call ETF or is that IQQQ? This is, yeah, what is the unique thing about QQQM? This is not the covered call one, right? There's something different about this one. The investment seeks to track the investment results of the NASDAQ 100 index, the underlying index. Oh, it's a lower fee option. Yeah, you're right. You're right. It is lower fee. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. The fund generally will invest at least 90% of its total assets in the securities that compromise the underlying index. Slightly lower expense ratios. Okay, so how much is that up? Your QQQM year to date is up. It's down 4%. The Qs, I would imagine, are the same. Yeah, it's almost exactly the same, down 4.09. Huh. Why don't people buy this then? There's got to be some larger reason it's stuck. The QQQM AUM is, well, it's still pretty large. And the top 10 holdings are relatively the same, still 60 billion. Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Tesla, Walmart, Meta, Google, and Broadcom. Well, that's what you have there. Yeah, definitely more liquidity in the Qs. Obviously, traders trade that a lot more. Zero DT options probably easier as well. Tesla trying to recover green. Hood back above 70. SPY at 658. That's true. There's probably no marketing for Q. Dude, at the airport in San Francisco, I saw a billboard to buy the QQQ. I was just like, wow, that is That is quite incredible. Like the average person seeing that probably doesn't know what QQQ, but if you're in the markets, it's a reminder to like associate that tech index with investing. And it probably does get a lot more people's attention. Okay, let's get a little bit more of an update on ISM, PMI, and then we'll keep going from there.
Okay, right? An indication that maybe it's not seeping through to underlying inflation, taking out.
Well, that would take the annual core to 2.7. Our prior was 2.5.
Yep.
So little by little, and in the wrong direction.
Right, but it wouldn't be like a spike above 3%. But we're watching it. You know, let's see what happens there. And then February PCE, which is the Fed's preferred gauge, is also out later this week. Little more stale because it's February. I'll just note though that the jobs commentary, because we weren't here on Friday, you know, when jobs came out, much better than expected. Of course, that headline number we know, 178,000 jobs. The commentary, mostly from the street, has been positive, even though there were some factors in here like, you know, a give back on the healthcare strike. JP Morgan says this gives us a little more confidence that economic growth can weather the ongoing energy price shock without too much enduring damage. High frequency economics. Today's payroll employment growth, massive overshoot of market expectations and strong data point. It is solid. But to your point, Carl, they say that the Fed has solid grounds for focusing on inflation challenges now. There's no sign of any risk to the labor market outcomes in these figures. And then Bank of America sort of echoes that. Too early for the data to reflect fallout from the war. The key positive is that the economy entered this shock on a largely stable job market. Given the Fed's focus on the unemployment rate, this print should keep them comfortably on hold. I think it was seen as a hawkish print for the Fed because now they can focus a little bit more on some of the inflationary upside risks. Today's prices paid and the services number is just the latest evidence.
I assume you read Rosenberg.
Yeah, he
Work week shrank, wages fell, U6 unemployment rose. The revision, one of the worst months of job losses in years.
You can always count on him for a negative take, even on the positive numbers. But look, that's his data, and he presents a case for why the underlying report is much softer than expected. But I think overall, the Wall Street commentary is this will be read positively by Wall Street and by the Fed.
Our next guest says his sentiment and positioning indicator.
The jobs data is bearish if you want inflation to come down. It's bullish if we need people to have jobs, which we do, which I hate to be stuck in 2024, but it's this constant balance between good news being bad news being good news. And it's annoying being stuck in it. But yeah, that's where we are. If inflation's kicking up, then that is where we are. Inflation was normal, we wouldn't have to deal with that, but because we won't only have to deal with one side of the mandate. But if we have two sides of the mandate, you know, that's not easily slowing down. 658 right there. On the S&P, SIDU is up 6.3. Space Name's still holding on. The Q's still making a move, 658.20. Sam Altman did an interview last Friday. You did have some pretty interesting updates. So the New Yorker, popular magazine, came out this morning and basically said you cannot trust Sam Altman. New interviews and closely guarded documents shed light on the persistent doubts about the head of OpenAI. The title is Sam Altman may control our future. Can he be trusted? And then he was asked if he should be trusted in an interview last Friday.
So, Sam, in your new industrial policy, you're saying as vividly as you ever have, and in this interview, you're saying as vividly as you ever have, that AI will transform every aspect of our lives. Why should people trust you to be at the forefront of it?
On the trust point, it's incredibly important that people building AI are high integrity, trustworthy people. And I think almost everybody involved in our industry feels the gravity of what we're doing. And so we all take that responsibility very seriously. We feel that weight every day. We also think it's very important that no one person is making the decisions by themselves that are going to impact all of us. I don't think we should have to trust a single person to get every decision right. We really believe in the democratization of AI. We really believe in putting this tool in the hands of people and letting people understand it, figure out what rules society collectively wants to put around it, and most importantly, how we're going to integrate it into our lives and have all these incredible benefits that we think are possible.
Okay, so he said absolutely nothing there. He was asked, why should we trust you? And he said absolutely nothing. He said, well, everyone who's thinking about AI deeply understands how important it is. I mean, look, there are some real concerns about Sam Altman as a leader. I mean, the guy took a nonprofit and turned it into a for-profit, and was ousted as CEO in November of 2023 and came back. And like, there's a lot of questions. The funny thing is, regardless of how you feel about him personally, your portfolio likely depends on OpenAI winning. No matter what you own, OpenAI has now, in my opinion, become too big to fail. I mean, they raised $120 billion. They cannot fail. Like $120 billion cannot go to zero, and the company cannot go bankrupt. Like, they have to win in some way or another. I think Anthropic is also too big to fail. I mean, quite frankly, these two companies are the leading foundation model companies that are pushing AI forward. Like, you're not seeing any brand new updates from Apple. So I think you kind of need them to win regardless of, how you feel. He's the reason Microsoft is down so much. That's probably true. But if he comes through on the RPO and the market does think that this $500 billion that they're going to pay Microsoft over the next 5 years is legit, then maybe that ends up boosting Microsoft long term. The Microsoft drawdown again is kind of crazy. There was a quote by I gotta see if I can find this real quick on Copilot, because we were talking about that last week as kind of the biggest issue. Yeah, this was the quote. So this came out when the market was closed on Friday. So this guy at Microsoft, Judson Althoff, who is the CEO of Microsoft's commercial business. Okay, here's what he said. He told employees that Copilot sales essentially hit the company's pretty big, audacious goals in the March quarter after pivoting towards paid subscriptions. Microsoft said in January, only about 3% of customers were paying for Copilot. So basically, the CEO of the commercial business is saying that March was a very good month for Copilot sales. Obviously, he's saying it for a reason. The stock is down 30%, primarily based off the idea that the software business is not growing, and so they're trying to get some good news out there. But we will see in a couple weeks what those numbers look like. And if those numbers are good, but not really as good as the street needs them to be for Copilot growth, and they better not miss on Azure again, because that's going to, not be the prettiest. The idea that Microsoft has a rebound back to 400, 415, I don't think is crazy. If Copilot hits their numbers and Azure hits their numbers as well, and, the RPO from OpenAI continues to grow and the market believes that. But if we see any of those metrics go to the downside, I mean, who knows where Microsoft could go? It's sitting at 2.7 trillion. I don't know. We saw 350 last Monday. Do we see that again if we get some bigger issues with Copilot? Where's Apple? Are we green today? I think, by the way, I've been thinking about this. Wow, Apple up 3%. I've been thinking about this over the weekend. Is there not the most obvious AI story on the planet for Apple in front of us? Forget the foldable phone, which I think is going to be a flop, and forget the Vision Pro and the glasses, which I also think have already flopped. Like, just them being able to make Siri as good as what we want it to be and charging maybe $10 a month for that. Like, how is that not one of the easiest AI stories in the market if Siri becomes the go-to agent that everyone is using? How does it not crowd out ChatGPT? You stop kind of using the LLMs you're using on a daily basis for, basic updates and news and interesting ideas and, chocolate chip cookie recipes. Like, why wouldn't all of that just happen through Siri? Like, I feel like I feel like there is an Apple AI thesis. Now, the multiple on Apple is stupid to pay compared to NVIDIA and Meta. I get it. But if the multiple is always going to be the multiple that it is, like, you would think the AI thesis there makes so much, and they don't have to spend anything on CapEx because the models have already done it for them. It's just they're 3 years late on making Siri a thing. And so I wonder, when that's ever going to change in any meaningful capacity. Correct, except they are not doing it. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just like, whether they use Gemini or GPT, I'm like, this has got to be so obvious that if consumers are already willing to pay for AI, and Apple to 2 billion devices gives them, superhuman-like capabilities with their LLM on a day-to-day basis, other than just like setting an alarm, you would think Apple's like one of the easiest AI plays that's out there. And it's Apple, you know, it has an institutional float that's likely never going to sell the stock. And if they just somewhat keep up their iPhone sales, and then maybe the foldable phone is a hit. Maybe I'm wrong about that, and that works. Like Apple to 300 doesn't sound crazy. It's just paying that multiple compared to NVIDIA, Meta, or Microsoft is kind of tough, I think, for people to imagine. Yeah, Mac Mini sales, that might be a catalyst as well to an extent. When Apple launches, they usually conquer. It's not late. It's when it actually matters. Okay, I hear you, and I'm an Apple fanboy, but man, are they late. I mean, I agree. When they launch, they usually launch with the right level of sophistication in their product. But it has been a long time since we got anything. I mean, the last thing we got from Apple AI was that 2023 event when they introduced the emojis, like the emojis that like kind of you can like you use natural language to describe a new emoji. That was the last real AI update. And then like the email auto summary stuff. I remember when I went to buy my Mac last year, the lady was trying to tell me these AI features, and I was just like, I'm just trying to buy this computer and leave. I'm never going to use any of this shit. She was like, well, you can do this, you can do this. I'm like, I'm never going to use this stuff ever. We need something real from Apple. Secretary of Labor, she got asked about how we're dealing with farmers now that fertilizer is getting hit based on this war. Here's what she said today as well.
What are you doing to make sure farmers can get what they need without breaking the bank?
Well, it's great to be on with you, and thanks so much for having me. So we are acutely aware and very, very, very focused on the cost of inputs. And it isn't just in the last 30 days since the conflict began, but really since we inherited a year and a half ago, increase in inputs from the Biden administration was between 30 and 40% all in: fertilizer, fuel, labor, et cetera. So we've been really focused on that. The good news is a lot of that has already come down.
What do you?
So again, the Biden administration is popping up a lot as the administration officials are trying to, discuss what has played out. I mean, Hassett, we looked at that last night as well. Hassett kind of blamed the Biden administration for the higher oil prices. And, it's just time will tell how much the American people still think the Biden administration is the kind of root cause of everything that's playing out. But I think right now more people are blaming the war versus anything else, because a lot of the issues from the Biden administration, they had subsided by the end of 2025. Like, you really didn't have that many of those issues. It's just, the war has started to reaccelerate the inflation. Trump will be live with Melania to give out Easter eggs pretty soon. I wonder if he takes any questions. Probably not. Again, 1 p.m. he'll be live talking about the war. But he'll be doing an Easter egg roll later today. I thought this clip was also interesting. This is what our boy, Mr. Grant Cardone, had to say about the Bitcoin bags that he is now holding.
We bought 2,000 Bitcoin last year, and our average price is probably 92, somewhere between 88 and 92. So I'm underwater on the Bitcoin now. And it doesn't bother me at all, because we tied it to a long-term asset. Now, if I believed Bitcoin was going to zero, I would have never done any of this.
So you're just saying the difference in what you think of the market price is of the property that you bought, and then what you actually paid for it, you put that delta in Bitcoin, basically.
The discount delta.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could take discounts your whole life. Discounts don't turn into more value. We bought two.
Got Mr. Cardone tying his properties. He was the real estate guy. He's now turned into the Bitcoin guy. Bitcoin and real estate is kind of his core message at the moment. Here's what the Secretary of Labor also said on affordability.
But the affordability is at the top of the president's list. Egg prices are down 80% since last year. We've been really working on that. If you remember, when we came in a year ago, people were paying $15 a dozen for a dozen eggs. That's not the case anymore. Dairy is down, butter is down. We've got some other veggies that are down, but we've got more work to do. And we're very, very focused on that and understanding that the affordability piece of this, while supporting the farmers, those are not mutually exclusive, but working hand in hand to ensure that we're able to do both. But the affordability.
And then here's what Hassett said on Friday.
Doing it. You know, last night I was in a restaurant and I asked every waiter, how much money did you make now that they're doing their taxes because of the no tax on tips? And the average answer, well, the lowest answer was $3,000 last year, and the highest was $10,000, which
Was that
was
for
they had,
people
they
who were
had
dining
kids.
there or people
Those
who were working
No,
there?
that was the people who were working there. So all of that is something that's going to feed this momentum in the economy. And while we're feeding that momentum, again, we've got all this foreign investment into the U.S. We just had a groundbreaking in Ohio for a big data center with SoftBank. And so this is really an economy that can't be slowed down.
What is it
doing it? You know,
let's look at gas prices right now. Here's where we are today. Top line is $4.09. You see where we were a year ago, $3.26. Maybe your forecast is the place to start here. Where do you see this going?
Well, you know, in the Trump White House, we always have our eyes on the horizon. President Trump has said that this is a temporary thing. And the markets now obviously agree. If you look at the jobs numbers today, if people thought this was going to be a long-term disruption, you would never see a job number like this. And so our expectation is that this is going to last just a little bit longer, and then things will get back to normal much faster than you could expect. The bottom line is, though, that we've taken every possible measure to minimize the disruption along the way. We have our eyes on the horizon, but we're also watching, you know, what's going on in the surf right now. And so, for example, we've released a strategic reserve. It's the second largest release of the strategic reserve on record. We've coordinated that with a lot of foreign governments. We've waived the Jones Act for 60 days, so U.S. Gas can easier move around within the U.S. We've done a lot of things. And finally,
with all the things the administration has done, gas prices, again, are still at a 3-year high, 658 on the S&P. The VIX just went red, so maybe that's your flip on the day if the VIX stays red and we can actually get that move to 660 on the S&P. VIX now 2386. I mean, the fact that the market is pricing in that volatility to the downside that heavily is pretty bullish for now. It's confusing given where oil is, but it is bullish, and I guess the market is fading this Tuesday deadline. But you know, oil still continues to be high, and that's why gas prices continue to be high, which is not the best thing in the world. 658.45 right there on Mr. S&P. Why is NVIDIA down today? I don't know. NVIDIA 176. I will tell you, with all of the vibe coding that I'm seeing going on, just in terms of OpenClaw and Claude Code, it feels like, once again, there is another reason to be even more bullish on NVIDIA. If everyone's going to be vibe coding at these levels, everyone's going to have agents, if the LLMs eventually on Siri and Gemini are going to become so advanced that people are using them for day-to-day tasks, we're going to need more compute. It's just that simple. This is the message that Jensen has been saying for a long time. They're going to grow 80%, probably more than 80%, because they're going to beat their expectations of 80 billion going into Q1 in a couple of weeks or a month, I think, when NVIDIA reports. Like, the idea that this stock is still going to be trading at these multiples, there's going to need to be some more macro forces to hold it down, like the war continuing, which is very possible. But, I mean, I would not want to have covered calls going into earnings for NVIDIA. And for a lot of these names, like, I wouldn't want to have meta covered calls going into, just because you would imagine the earnings, unless anything has changed dramatically in the past 90 days for these companies outside of their multiples getting compressed, you would think, like, even if it's a temporary pop, it would be a pop when they put up these numbers. And if the war dies down, then you've got a decent macro backdrop to potentially help sustain. Yeah, like Micron. I don't want to be short Micron going into earnings. I mean, they're probably going to deliver, once again, a fantastic quarter. It's just a question of, you know, is the street willing to give them more of that premium? It's just, again, you know, the memory name's a bit different from some of the other AI names like NVIDIA, but the earnings growth is there. The Q's right there, 588, almost its high of day, very close to it. Yes, I did see Google's Gemma model. I actually saw that this morning. This is edge compute, and it allows you to run it without having to go back to a data center. And this is actually a really cool video. Let's take a look at this. You can run it locally on your device.
Hi, my name is Olivier, and I'm a group product manager on the Gemma team. Since we launched our first models, the developer community has absolutely blown us away. Over 400 million downloads, over 100,000 variants. You've built a vibrant ecosystem around Gemma, and we could not be more grateful. We've listened very closely to what you wanted next, and today we are thrilled to announce Gemma 4. Built from the same world-class research and technology behind Gemini 3, Gemma 4 is our family of open models designed to run directly on the hardware you own: phone, laptops, and desktop. For the first time ever, we are releasing Gemma under an open source Apache 2.0 license. Gemma 4 is built for the agentic era. It can handle complex logic, multi-step planning, and agentic workflows, making optimal use of tokens for its intelligence. The bigger model...
So the point is, it does all of this on your device. And you had a bunch of people put out some videos of how they've been using the Gemma model on their device, which, again, is going to be really useful for a variety of different use cases when you're not able to hook up to the cloud. And it's open source now. Or at least this version of it, they've released it under an open source architecture. So the idea that this stuff is slowing down is just not easy to imagine, but it's a war. And by the way, Trump called it a war over the weekend. He called up one of the CBS reporters and said, it's a war. We're in a war right now. Even though he's not supposed to say that because he needs congressional approval to legitimize any real war. But as per the president, it's a war that we've won, but it is a war. And until this thing ends, a lot of these fundamentals just, continue to get ignored. Iran conveys their reply to the U.S. proposal on the war to end to Pakistan, as per the IRNA media agency. Okay, so we don't have the exact reply yet, but the reply was given to the Pakistanis, and it looks like the Pakistanis will be the mediators and the intermediaries that relay the reply to the United States. I mean, I think we all know what the reply is. The reply is going to be either full end the war and leave the region, or no ceasefire. Iran's reply consists of 10 clauses. Okay, so it looks like there's going to be a lot of juice to this reply. We don't have the reply yet. 10 clauses. This is becoming a joke, dude. This is this is every day. Yeah, number 1, no. Number 2, no. Number 3, no. Iran rejects a ceasefire in reply to U.S. via Pakistan. Okay, so we already knew they rejected the ceasefire. I imagine they want their clauses. I mean, this is basically their response to the 15 pieces of negotiations. S&P, yeah, look at that red candle. Is that really off that headline? Iran rejects a ceasefire in reply to the U.S. via Pakistan. I mean, we saw that headline 3 hours ago, but I guess the market's actually believing it now. That is crazy, bro. 3 hours ago, the market didn't believe it. VIX is back up 2%. And now the market wants to believe it. I mean, there's just no way you can read into how price action is dictated. I mean, you can try to read into, the market is bullish, the market is bearish, but another random reiteration of a headline and we go back down. Responses include demands encompassing to end the conflict in the region, number 1, and a protocol for a safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz, number 2. Iran's response shows Tehran is rejecting the ceasefire and emphasizing the necessity of a permanent end to war. Okay, so the market had Iran agreeing priced in. Yeah, essentially. And right now, quickly, the market's realizing they're not going to agree. Which, if it sounds kind of crazy that the market had Iran agreeing to these demands, it is kind of crazy. But nonetheless, that's what it seems like the market had priced in. And now the market's pricing that back out, which is why you're seeing these red candles. Ultimately, the issue here, and we talked about it last night, is Trump doesn't want to leave and then the strait opens because the narrative is going to be, we beat the U.S., we forced them to leave because we have so much control over the oil that we have leverage over the U.S. and, we'll open the strait now because we also want to make money as the Iranians, but we get to do it in a very braggadocious way because we kicked out the United States. And the Iranians don't want to open the strait if Trump demands them to, because then the Iranians are not going to be able to say that they won, because they're going to say, hey, the U.S. was too strong for us and we had to ultimately capitulate. So both sides want the strait to be open. It's just they want it to, because Iran's going to make a lot of money off of it and the U.S. is going to stabilize oil prices from it. But it can't happen unless the other one flinches first. And right now, we just don't know which one is going to do that. 100% it's an ego-based war. Or at least that's what it feels like. It's an ego-based war. The U.S. attacked military targets, Iran attacked civilian targets, and somehow the algos have brainwashed the population into siding with Iran here. What is wrong with us? Well, I don't think everyone is on Iran's side. I don't think that's the case. Definitely politically, I think there are people who are very much against the regime here. I don't even think the algos are on anyone's side. I think the algos are trying to figure out, is the Strait of Hormuz going to open? And every time the algos get close enough to thinking it is, we pump, and then you get headlines like the one I just read 5 minutes ago, and then they think the strait's not. I mean, the market has never cared about Iranian liberation. They've only cared about, is oil going to be affected by an escalation of this war? So if you're framing it through the algos are on people's side, I disagree with that. I don't think the algos care about who's right or who's wrong. They're not taking a side. I mean, same with the reciprocal tariffs. The algos never cared about these countries paying this or those countries paying this, or the fact that we're ruining our ties with NATO. Like, the algos just care about, look, our price is going to get more expensive. Is inflation going to go up? Are we going to have less chance of rate cuts if we have tariffs? And as soon as Trump said he's getting rid of the tariffs, boom, or delaying it for 90 days, which was enough for the market to be happy, we rebounded. Oh, I meant the social media algos. I mean, that's a different question. I mean, that depends on what side of Twitter you're on at this point. Speaking of social media, Blue Sky is dying pretty badly. Blue Sky went down to only 1.6 million people per day liking posts. And part of the reason for that, there was analysis that came out over the weekend, is that Blue Sky is heavily, heavily tailored just to one side of the political spectrum, the left side being kind of the main user base of Blue Sky. And you're starting to see that user growth significantly decline. So I think more people are getting their news from X than anything. And then it's just a question of what side of the algo are you on when it comes to X. Iran's demands also include reconstruction and lifting of sanctions. Iran demands a permanent end to the war. U.S. officials tell Axios Iran sent on Monday a 10-point response for the proposal to end the war. The U.S. officials said the response was maximalist and unclear if it will allow moving forward to a diplomatic solution. Okay, that's obviously why we're seeing S&P go red right here. 657.97. Axios says, so this 10-point response already has been achieved by the U.S. or already has been received. It's not in transit anymore. This is a follow-up to that 45-day ceasefire headline from last night. The U.S. officials said the response was maximalist, quote unquote, and unclear if it will allow moving forward to a diplomatic solution. Okay. Sounds like a greater argument for war continuing. Sounds like it. Unless this 10-point is part of the negotiation that's needed to make things happen. Did you talk about Iran threatening to bomb OpenAI's data center in UAE? I saw that headline. I don't really know if they would go that far. Yes, Iran did threaten to bomb a OpenAI data center in the Middle East. And obviously that would not be the best. Definitely wouldn't help the AI thesis if OpenAI, which is already so behind on their CapEx spending, slows down even further. But I mean, if they do it, what's OpenAI going to do? Like, at this point, a lot of companies, Oracle, Amazon got hit in Bahrain last week. Which is why I think investors need to have some sympathy on these earnings if we do get some bad guidance. It's like, none of these companies can control it at this point. These companies can't get involved in the war themselves. All they can do is support the United States and hope an end to this happens. But no one knows when that's going to take place. ASTS still up about 4% on the day as well. Isn't the S&P green? Yes, but it's hit a red candle from the very high. We were at 659. Looks like this 10-point proposal, which is not necessarily bearish. That's kind of, at least the Iranians are offering, some level of negotiation, even if they have their own way of doing it. I mean, the first proposal was obviously ridiculous. There was no way they were going to agree to that. So here's a new one. The U.S. is probably not going to agree to this, but maybe there's some place they can meet in the middle. And maybe that's why we're at least still somewhat green on the day. Even though we're red. Qatari Ministry of Defense announces the state of Qatar was targeted by an attack involving a number of drones launched from Iran. Okay, that is also not good. Cactus, do you have the X post on this? Did they put out a full-on statement? Qatari Ministry of Defense announces the state of Qatar was targeted by an attack involving a number of drones launched from Iran. The Barca oil company manager says Iraq can restore oil exports to 3.4 million barrels per day within a week if the Strait of Hormuz shipping can resume. Okay, so Iraq saying there is a shot for us to keep up our oil output if the strait opens. And then you have the Ministry of Defense in Qatar saying there was a new attack. Iran has turned Israel, Qatar, Saudi, and the U.S. into mutual foes here, 100%. 100%. I mean, there was a lot of reporting last week that MBS in Saudi wants the U.S. to keep fighting Iran because, he's getting tired of this shit. He's trying to transform the country, trying to export more oil, and the idea of constantly having to deal with this threat of Iran holding the Strait of Hormuz hostage is not something that he wants to deal with either. Now, the question is the U.S. willing to go that far? And I don't know. Given Trump said we won the war, last Wednesday. Like, if we stay for the coming weeks, obviously we are likely going to be escalating that. That's why it's hard to believe this pump, guys. It's really hard to believe that we stay green when every single headline is an escalation, unless you assume the market is pricing in all of it, which maybe, but at some point it's also just like, maybe it's just nonsense that's going on in the stock market with oil pumping this. Again, oil pumping this high means inflation is going to be bad. There's no world in which that's not true. Now, if oil calms down, inflation can calm down as well, but oil has not calmed down. It's up 95% this year. And even if it's only up 75%, that would still be pretty bad. Which is part of the reason why it's not easy to buy the dip here. Again, if you buy the dip 5 years out, who cares? But if you're buying for like a month out, it is really tough to be like, you think you're getting a good price because you just don't know. Rocket Lab goes red. S&P very close to going red. Rocket Lab has gone red, 67.55. I do not have any calls on my Rocket Lab shares, but part of the choppiness is kind of why people want to have calls on a lot of these high beta names. S&P very close to going red again today, 80 cents away from getting it. Is Trump live now? Let's pull up the Easter egg thing. Is that live? All right, there he is.
Master Gunnery Sergeant Kevin Benier, accompanied by the President's own United States Marine Band, will now honor America with the singing of our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early...
Okay, we're not going to listen to that. I am curious after this if Trump says any words. VIX is spiking again, 2.3, 2450. Is Trump really going to talk about war standing next to an Easter bunny? Well, we're about to find out if he does. Does everyone remember the Trump Easter bunny clip last time about Biden? Yeah, this was last year.
Do you remember the bunny with Joe Biden? Remember? You remember when the bunny took Joe Biden out? He's not taking Trump out. Anyway, that was a beautiful moment when the bunny saved Joe Biden.
So that's what we had in 2025. And we'll see if Trump says any words on this one this time around. S&P is getting hit right here, 650, 690. As that one continues to go red. Where's Palantir? Palantir's at 148.46. 148.46. Okay, Trump's talking. Let me pull it up.
Not been done before. We've broken every record on the stock market. We've broken every record in our military. And what about the rescue that took place yesterday? What about that? It's something that you rarely see. You know, they were giving me a briefing about that. And they said, normally when you're in very hostile territory, and I don't think it gets much more hostile than Iran, they're capable fighters. They're very tough people. And there are others like that. You don't mind when the enemy is weak, but that enemy is strong. Not so strong like they were about a month ago. I can tell you, in fact, right now, they're not too strong at all, in my opinion, but we're soon going to find out, aren't we? But when a thing like that happens, where a pilot shot down, in most instances, you're really not able to go in because you'll go in with 200 people and lots of jet fighters and helicopters, and you really don't have a chance. They get shot down. You lose 200 in order to pick up one. It's a horrible thing, but it's very rare that you can do it. And what we did yesterday is we picked up not one, we picked up two. We kept the first one quiet, and we were able to keep it quiet for about a day, which made it a lot better. But those two pilots were incredible, brave, and we thank them. And we're going to be having a news conference today at 1 o'clock at the Oval Office, and we look forward to it. But I just want to say we have a great military. We're the greatest military, the most powerful military any place in the world. You saw what happened with Venezuela. And it's an honor. I built it in my first term, and I didn't know I was going to be using it this much in my second term, but it's my honor. And they're the greatest people on earth. Our warriors are the greatest fighters on earth. And they very much appreciate you and love you, and that's why they do it. So this is all about today. I must tell you, I came out and I expected we were going to be talking about farmers, and we love our farmers. We were going to talk about so many different products, but you know what they want to talk about? Sir, this is about eggs. Eggs. Because we have the egg farmers of the entire country here, and they are unbelievable. And if you remember, when I first got elected, my first news conference with the fake news, a lot of fake news here today, but I had a news conference, and the first question, what are you going to do about eggs, sir? I said, what's wrong with eggs? I just got there. It's my second day in office. I had a news conference, and they were screaming at me, what am I going to do about eggs? Then I said, well, it's like, tell me what's wrong with eggs. The price was so high. It was 4 times higher than it was a year before. I said, well, that sounds like a problem. Let me think about it. And Brooke Rollins, our great Secretary of Agriculture, she got involved. We all got involved. They didn't want me, as you know, just last year, it's hard to believe, they didn't want me to order eggs for the Easter egg roll, the Easter egg hunt that we have here every year. They wanted me to use plastic. I said, I'm not using plastic. We'll get it solved. And within a short period of time, eggs came down. They came down 40%, 50%. And by the time we got there, we had so many eggs, we didn't know what to do with them. And today we have more than 40,000 eggs supplied by all of the great egg farmers that are with us. So eggs is a big thing, and it was a big thing to our great First Lady, who's here someplace. Let's see. I think this is our first lady. What do you think of our first lady? She's a movie star. I don't know. Do we call her first lady or a movie star? She has the biggest movie. Can you believe this? And she deserves it. Would you like to say a couple of words to your friends? Come on.
Happy Easter Monday. I hope you enjoy this beautiful day. We are celebrating a very special Easter egg roll this year because it's 250th birthday of this beautiful nation. Enjoy it, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks. Thank you, honey. And she worked very hard with her staff and the staff of the White House on really just making it nice. This is the nicest I've ever seen it. So this is my 5th, and I will say that it gets better every time, right? It gets better every time. You notice the fencing is all brand new. I said, we could have bought used fencing and saved a lot of money. They said, this is for Easter, and this is for our egg farmers, and we're going to get new fencing. Everything's new and everything's beautiful, and the White House never looked better, and our country never looked better. So I just want to thank everybody. It's been a special period of time. 1 year ago, a little bit more, our country was dead. We had a dead country. We had an administration that didn't know what the hell they were doing. Today, we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're respected by everybody, and that's the way we're going to keep it. That's the way we're going to keep it. So again, I want to thank all of the associations and the egg farmers and all of the people that are here. We think we could have 50,000 people coming all day long. It's open, and they expect between 30 and 50,000 people, so that's great. And most importantly, I want to just say Happy Easter and God bless America. We have the greatest country on earth. God bless you all. You are very, very special people. Thank you, everybody. Have a good time.
And that's the President of the United States.
Okay. So that is what we got from Mr. Donnie T. Again, at 1 p.m., he will be live again, and he'll probably be, giving an update on the war, and I guess we'll see what he says right there. 657.70 S&P getting a little bit of a pump after flipping red 5 minutes ago. Again, it's just back and forth, up and down. Egg prices are down. He's not wrong about that. It's just oil prices are up a lot more. So I think, now the market's waiting to see if oil can come down as much as it comes down for eggs. Again, Trump also, he might talk about this today, the $500 billion of increased defense spending. So it'll be 1.5 trillion at this point that he's going for. I don't know how much support he's going to have in Congress for this. You had Ro Khanna over the weekend basically say there's no way in hell that they're going to support that.
Any scenario where you would support new funding if it was determined necessary for the readiness of the military?
No, I'm not supporting new funding. I mean, they're asking for $400 billion. I know you asked Senator Kaine and Representative Lawler. The answer for every Democrat should be absolutely no. Absolutely no. We don't need to read it. We don't need to study it. It's $400 billion for a war that we oppose. We could have universal child care for that. We could have free public college for that. We could pay teachers $60,000 for that. I call it new economic patriotism. Democrats need to oppose this funding and say we're actually for the American people.
So you're going to have a pretty feisty debate back and forth as Trump continues to, make the argument that the military conflict in Iran is going to necessitate more money. Obviously, if the conflict gets more intense, then more money will be necessary as well. But you're also going to have, a part of Congress in the context of the Democrats that might not want to vote to increase defense spending simply because they don't think it was necessary to have this war in the first place. And that's going to be another kind of characteristic of how the midterms play out, because if Trump loses the House and the Senate in the midterms, it's going to be unlikely he gets to easily pass the defense budget. If he wins the House and the Senate, then there's a better shot. But that is the 1.5 trillion that he is advocating for. So we will see. We will see over the coming days if there's any chance of that happening. VG getting a move right here. VG back to 15. Where's crude? I mean, how long do you think this war can continue? Crude's at 111. Crude actually just flipped slightly red. I don't know. I mean, put in the chat. Actually, let me do another poll. I don't know, dude. I thought by now we would be getting close to an end. And everything Trump has said has affirmed that we are close to an end, but we haven't actually ended. So it's almost like every guess becomes irrelevant at this point because, we're not really ending. Barclays cuts their SoFi price target to 18 from 28. Wow. SoFi not getting the love on the institutional side. But granted, it's not just SoFi. A lot of fintechs, Robinhood, Affirm, Coin, they've all gotten their price targets get slashed. So it's not that crazy to see those price targets come back down. Okay, how long do you think this war lasts? Let's do 2 more weeks. Let's do 1 more month. 2 more months. And then 3+ months. So 2 weeks is the closest option for it ending. And then, I mean, if I had to guess right now, I would say another month. I would say we probably another 4 weeks if I had to purely guess. 2 months feels aggressive. Then again, who knows? 2 weeks feels way too conservative or way too optimistic. Rocket Lab flipping green again, 67.96. S&P almost 66.58 again. But I guess in the next few weeks we will know. I mean, who knows? Maybe this week, maybe this 10-point proposal is where they negotiate from. And I'm really curious what the hell's happening on Tuesday, bro. Like, I really wonder, is Trump going to attack energy infrastructure in a serious way? And I just, it's hard to imagine he does, but then again, it's also not crazy to imagine they do it. Because if they do, then, they would think they have a lot more leverage here. 657 on the S&P. How can all these people put out price targets when no one knows what will happen with this war? Yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point. It is very difficult to put out a price target in this environment. I mean, you could have a theory on a stock, obviously, but the simple argument here is that if oil continues to stay higher for longer, like let's say oil's at 120 for the rest of the year, which I hope doesn't happen, but let's say every earnings revision outside of the Mag 7 has to be revised. And I would imagine it would still affect the Mag 7 to an extent. It just would hurt them the least compared to everything else. But the cost of capital will stay high. That's going to affect companies like Nebius and Core, even Iran, that have to dilute and issue senior convertible notes. It's obviously going to affect companies that have to pay for raw materials and goods in terms of their COGS to be able to come out with a product. The Walmarts of the world would be affected by that. The real estate companies, I mean, if we don't have lower rates, Home Depot, Lowe's, those are probably going to get hit. Home Depot up a little bit on the day, 324 Palantir, 149. Cruise lines, airlines are going to get hit. Tesla, wow, Tesla's going to hit again, 355. It tried to recover. It's getting no recovery here. 367, right back down to 355. American Airlines, United Airlines, all of those, that are in 30% drawdowns will likely continue to stay in those drawdowns. The cruise lines as well, as the cost of oil goes up. Carnival year to date is down 17%. The only one that's not down that much is Delta. And I found out over the weekend they own a refinery. So that's why Delta is only down 3%, whereas the other airlines are down 18 to 25%. So, that's one that's been able to hedge against some of the volatility, but it's really hard to have a price target if this war continues. Do you want to know what kind of bullet Netflix dodged? Less than 40,000 people watched the new Star Trek show. Wow, is that true? Goodness. Yeah, I mean, look, HBO Max, that was a play for nostalgia, but $90 billion for that nostalgia. For Harry Potter and all that stuff. I agree. I think it's a great idea that Netflix ended up, not having to buy it. I mean, as much as I think the content would have been beneficial, that debt would have been with them for years. Years and years and years of just being stuck in that turmoil. But the question is, what content do they create now that is going to be good enough to get the market excited? The other thing, we played this last night, but I think this is also relevant here. The average tax refund starts to get hit pretty badly with the cost in oil continuing to go up as, you're not really going to see the increase of that stimulus if people have to continue paying more at the pump.
Bill is going to be kind of a tailwind for the U.S. consumer, but all of that money that they're going to get back is probably going to be spent on higher gas prices.
Yeah, so the average tax refund is a couple $100. It'll be boosted. Most people don't get tips. Most people don't get wages, but for people do, you're talking $500 or $600. We can mechanically estimate how much more the average driver is going to spend on gas, and it's about $500 or $700. So they basically, so the boost that a lot of economists were predicting relative to the one big beautiful bill are now being eaten up. That's assuming gas prices stay elevated for the course of the year.
Matt, it's like, oh, you got an $800 tax refund.
But now everything is more expensive.
And now you're going to spend $800 extra over the next, 3 months filling your gas tanks for whatever SUVs you're driving. So it's a push.
It's a good point, right? If the average tax refund is $500 and it goes up to $800, maybe $900, and then the price of gas continues to stay elevated, inflation alone washes that, or the price at the pump in the summer when you're traveling washes that refund. So, it might not be the type of stimulus that people thought would easily happen. What happened to the ground invasion? So we don't know if there is going to legit be a ground invasion or not. There was somewhat of a ground troop operation on Saturday to recover the ejected pilot, but there is not an official, ground troop invasion taking place. There are tons of troops that have been deployed to the Middle East, including Marines. So, if the U.S. wanted to, it seems like they have the capability to, but as of now, we don't know if it's actually going to happen. Where's the 10-year? 10-year is 4.331. All right, so that's being down a little bit as well. I haven't gotten gas for like 30 days. I rarely drive. Yeah, obviously I don't need to get gas anymore because I have the Tesla, but it's one of those things where, the majority of people do not drive EVs. And as a result, that's probably going to still be an issue for people. Unless people just stop traveling so they don't have to drive as much, which is what we're seeing in the Philippines, as it's now being mandated that people have to work from home one day of the week to ration some of the oil, which is just crazy. But that would be bad for consumer demand, which would be bad for the economy if people stop traveling, especially going into the summer. Micron right there up 3.2%. S&P at 657. Pakistan Army chief was in contact all night long with the U.S. VP J.D. Vance, while the White House Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the Iran foreign minister were in discussions. Okay, so you got the Pakistanis still talking to J.D., who's been more on the side of negotiating. And Trump confirmed to us that JD will be negotiating. Hassett is live. Let's take a look at what he's saying right now, as he just went live.
U6 was up a tenth. And then wages, Kevin, have gone from 4.2 now to 3.5. Do you worry about that working against some of the dynamics that we're seeing in, say, gasoline?
Right. It's important not to read too much into 1 month's survey. The fact is that If you look at that same jobs report, it now shows that 54 million people, 54,000 people have gained construction jobs over the last few months. And so those construction jobs are happening because we expensed factories, which are creating more jobs, increasing labor demand, and increasing wages. You know, when President Trump was here in the first term, we saw right before COVID that typical worker had a more than $6,000 pay raise because of all the factory construction. Factory construction this time is way ahead of that pace. And so we're very, very bullish about wages.
That raises the other thing, which we talked about last week regarding the anniversary of Liberation Day, because some work's been done showing foreign direct investment actually fell last year. It's below the 10-year average. U.S. factories employ 90,000 fewer than in April of last year. Is this just a factor of it taking time to start up a new plant?
Yeah, well, there's a heck of a lot of construction, and we've been keeping track of groundbreaking, and we've got like more than 100 groundbreakings that we're tracking because of the deals that we've been making. And so, yeah, I think that the factory construction is step one. Step two is you get all the machines inside the factory and then hire the workers, and we're in the normal cycle right now.
Which do you think is the bigger risk for the Fed right now? Is it higher inflation or lower unemployment or higher unemployment?
Yeah, I think that obviously we respect the independence of the Fed, but the bottom line is that if we have a supply shock like we're seeing because of all this capital spending, $18 trillion of new spending, AI increasing productivity, it puts downward pressure on inflation, and that should take the pressure off the Fed. They should be able to lower rates, and I expect that that's what's going to happen when my friend Kevin Warsh gets in there.
You think that he's still going to stick with his plan to cut rates? Because in this environment, I mean, the market has basically priced out the rate cuts and starting to price in higher odds of rate hikes, given what's happening with inflation.
Look, the bottom line is that we're in a time just like we were in the 90s when Alan Greenspan saw that because the computer was revolutionizing American industry, that there was a positive supply shock which put downward pressure on prices. And so he kept interest rates low, and we had a 4 or 5 year boom. I think that AI is a more powerful force than the internet. And that, thinking like Alan Greenspan's is something that I think would be necessary. And
got a couple quotes from Trump right here. I don't know who he gave these quotes to, but here are the quotes. He says, "I've seen every proposal on Iran. The Tuesday deadline is final. The Iran proposal is a big step, but it's, quote, not good enough." He says it's a significant proposal. And he says the war can end very quickly if they do the things they need to do. He might have called up one of these reporters and told them this. The Iran war could end very quickly if they do the things they need to do. The new proposal is a significant step. I'm assuming he means step in the right direction. Got a little bit of a green candle on the SPY. A little bit, 657. I mean, if they come to a deal by Tuesday before 8 p.m., who knows? Maybe that's what we're looking for. But if not, then, obviously this stuff probably continues.
Refreshing at the Fed right now.
But don't you just have to also react to what you're getting on the data? Today we got services PMI, for instance. Prices paid at a 3.5-year high. I mean, there are indications that inflation could be stuck sort of stubbornly high here.
Again, if you look at the Cleveland Fed estimate of the next month, then it's back to almost normal. And so I think there's a temporary disruption that we expect that people will look through. And again, you can't have a big increase in supply and not have downward pressure on prices. It's very, very simple economics.
We had an economist from JP Morgan on last week who's bullish about the year, in part, Kevin, because of the idea of Congress somehow passing a rebate. Now, we've talked over the last year about DOGE rebates. We've talked about tariff rebates. But do you think Congress has the stomach to have some direct stimulus before, say, the midterms?
Well, it's not my role to negotiate with Congress right now on those matters. But I could say that if you look at just even the reduction in federal employment, that's going to save just this year American taxpayers $32 billion. If you look at all the tariff revenue that's come in,
these are the quotes. Trump was taking some questions right here. So this is when he said this stuff.
Deadline is Tuesday at 8 p.m. Your final deadline.
Let's see if we can
made a proposal, and it's a significant proposal. It's a significant step. It's not good enough, but it's a very significant step.
Okay, so he took some Q&A at the Easter thing, And that's where you're seeing these quotes come in from.
They made a proposal, and it's a significant proposal. It's a significant step. It's not good enough, but it's a very significant step.
Very significant step. Either you believe that or you don't. But that is Trump's response to this Iranian proposal.
It's reducing the deficit. We had about a $600 billion reduction in the deficit in the last calendar year. And so I'm sure that it's something that if that momentum continues, that historically, then what could happen is that the government takes less money from people because the deficit's gone down so much.
You know, we got this sort of Sam Altman laid out this big plan Monday comparing the shift of superintelligence to other major technology transitions. And I'm wondering, Director Hassett, how much you guys have planned for the possible major disruption of jobs and society as a result of AI. One of the proposals here is a policy like the New Deal, progressive era, to make sure that there are shared opportunities for everyone as a result of what's happening with AI.
You're right. It's essential that we do that. And we're studying every possible scenario. We've been digging hard through the small business data and finding that small businesses that leverage the use of AI have seen their revenues grow really, really rapidly and not seen a loss in employment, which would explain really why at this stage we're seeing really strong gains in employment while AI is being adopted. There's a heck of a lot of room still, a whole bunch of small businesses that haven't started to leverage the AI. And so there's a lot of room for more growth like that. But we also have to keep an eye on the long run, and we're doing that as well.
But you don't see any evidence that AI is disrupting jobs at a macro level now?
We're seeing a little bit in computer programmers, but what's happening is that the computer programmers are becoming also way more productive. And so that's making their services more valuable. And so you need more of them. And so those two things are close to not offsetting, but everything else is a positive right now.
Well, we'll certainly continue to watch that one with your help. Kevin Hassett, thank you so much for your time today.
All right, so Hassett saying the same stuff that we heard last Friday, nothing too crazy. The big stuff are these Trump quotes coming in. I'll see if I can get some more videos of this. But you have a bunch of these quotes. He says they want to, they don't want to say uncle, but they will. If I had my choice, I would take the oil. And he says, when the Iranian people don't hear bombs go off, they're upset. Here's a couple more videos of these impromptu questions right here.
Have you spoken with Piers Thomas also? Do you believe the UK could resurrect like Jesus this Easter week?
Well, that's what they need. They have a long way to go. The UK has a long way to go. We don't want another Neville Chamberlain. Do we agree? We don't want Neville Chamberlain.
Okay, so that's Trump about the UK. Then you have this one.
How is the airman who was rescued doing?
He's doing really well. They're both doing well. It was two, and we held off the one because if they would have known we had him, so we held off the one. They are both recovering very well. They were both injured, and they're doing well.
And then this is Trump on the oil.
And we've obliterated a very powerful country in 34 days. Yeah, if it were up to me, I'd like to keep the oil. I just don't think the people of the United States would really understand.
The music in the background is crazy. We've obliterated the Iranians, and the music is like some nice little soft jazz playing. Like, it was crazy, bro. It was crazy. This is the longer version of that clip. Let's pull this up.
We killed Soleimani. Without Soleimani, if they had Soleimani, it would be a whole different thing. Maybe. Would still be winning, but it would have been harder.
because we are obliterating that country. And I hate to do it, but we're obliterating, and they just don't want to say uncle. They don't want to cry, as the expression goes, uncle, but they will. And if they don't, they'll have no bridges, they'll have no power plants, they'll have no anything. I won't go further because there are other things that are worse than those two. And we might have, well, the thing, if I had my choice, what would I like to do? Take the oil. Because it's there for the taking. There's not a thing they can do about it. Unfortunately, the American people would like to see us come home. If it were up to me, I'd take the oil, I'd keep the oil, I would make plenty of money. And I'd also take care of the people of Iran, much better than they've been taken care of. It's been horrible. They've killed 45,000 people as of a month and a half ago. 45,000 protesters. We don't do that. So if I had my choice, I'd keep the oil. But I also want to make the people of our country happy. I think most people wouldn't understand that.
And then he talked about Venezuela here.
Yeah, I think most people wouldn't understand that. I'll give you an example. Venezuela has worked out so incredibly. We have 100 million barrels of oil right now in Houston being refined. It's been great. The relationship with Venezuela, the leaders, has been fantastic. And I think we're going to have a long-term, very good relationship. And it might be beyond long-term. You understand what
And then this is Trump saying we've already had regime change.
What's stopping you from ending the war?
Well, it could end very quickly, the war, if they do what they have to do. They have to do certain things. They know that. They've been negotiating, I think, in good faith. We've had total regime change. You know, the people there now are much more reasonable than the lunatics that you had in phase one and phase two. They were lunatics. The people that we're negotiating with now on behalf of Iran are much more reasonable. You can call it what you want, but I call it regime change, and I think most people are giving us credit for that. The first regime was taken out, the second regime was taken out. Now the third group of people that we're dealing with is not as radicalized, and we think they're actually much smarter.
And this is Trump saying the Iranian people do want to hear bombs.
How is it taking care of the Iranian people if you're bombing?
Yeah, who you with? Who you with?
Yes.
Well, that's a radical left group of lunatics that you're with. Let me just tell you, very fair question. The Iranian people, when they don't hear bombs go off, they're upset. They want to hear bombs because they want to be free. And the only reason they're not out protesting, you know that, is because they were informed that if they protest, like the wrestler and his friends, if they protest, they will be shot immediately. And that's an edict. That's in writing.
All right, so that's Trump making the case that the Iranian people want to be bombed because that will dictate the end of the current regime. And he says if they don't hear bombs, they actually are more upset. And this is what he said when he was asked about his internal polling.
Mr. President, when you say the American people don't want that, how do you know that? Are you listening to polls?
Well, I tell you what, I'm pretty good at this stuff, and I go around and I check. They'd like to see us win and come home. And I appreciate CNN for the first time maybe in my life. They did a poll, and everyone's saying, oh, is Trump losing MAGA? No, I'm not losing MAGA. MAGA loves what I'm doing. And CNN did a poll of MAGA voters, a big poll, very important poll, Harry. And he went on, he said, this is amazing, 100% support. He said, I've never had a 100% poll at anything before. And is, do you support Trump, MAGA people, which is, by the way, mostly Republican. And if you look, I would say MAGA makes up a majority, like about 95% of the Republican Party, all right? So they went out, they did a poll, and CNN came back 100% support. So they support what we're doing, but they would like to see it end and come back. But remember, wars last years. We're in there for 34 days, and we've obliterated a very powerful country in 34 days.
All right, those are updates from Mr. Trump at 1 p.m. S&P, a little bit of a red candle, basically flat on the day at 657. We are going to see what updates he gives on the war. I mean, obviously, just based on those quotes, you could tell that the dude wants to end it. Like, it does not seem like he really wants this thing to go on much longer. I think that's what the market's pricing in. We'll find out if we get any closer to some real negotiations. He did mention the most important thing he said out of all those quotes were that the Iranians' proposal, their 10-point proposal, was a significant step in the right direction. That doesn't guarantee there's going to be any level of ceasefire or deal that's reached, but that means both sides are talking. One side gave you a proposal, the other side responded with their proposal. Doesn't mean they've come to an agreement, but it does mean they've at least begun conversations, even if it's through intermediaries. Tesla really getting hit today, down 2%, 353. Tesla, the worst out of all the Max 7s today, I believe, in terms of the decline. Yeah, it's Tesla. Google's green, Microsoft's flat, Amazon's up, Meta's up, Google's up. I mean, Microsoft's not flat, it's down 0.48, but not down as aggressively. Amazon's up, and then Nvidia's down 0.5. So Tesla are getting hit a little bit worse, but yeah, if this significant proposal is anything reasonable, then maybe we'll get closer to this kind of ending up. Bitcoin also very close to the high of days at 69.65. Ethereum as well at 2164. It's definitely not one conversation. Yeah, I mean, I would imagine there's multiple intermediaries having multiple groups of discussions, multiple different factions in Iran, quote unquote, negotiating. You got Kushner and Witkoff with some people, you got Vance with other people. I mean, obviously it's hard to figure out what exactly is true, but maybe there is some level of negotiation that's easier for the markets to price in. Now, oil still continues to be high. You would think oil would come down today. We're still green on the day at 111.76, almost 112, even with this 10-point counter proposal that Iran has put out. As long as oil stays up, there's going to be a lot of skepticism around kind of what's playing out this market. I got one more clip right here, and then we'll end it up for the day, of Trump speaking about Iran.
You said Iran has been obliterated. Why are we still having war?
It's a big country. They can't fight back. They have no capability. They have some missiles left. They have some drones left, but essentially they have no capability. They had a lucky shot with an airplane, but we got them back out. The rescue was incredible. And it wasn't a one person, it was a two-person. There are those that say that's never happened before, because usually when you're shot down in strong enemy and deep enemy territory, you can't go after them because you'll end up losing 250 people to get one. So it's a terrible thing. But we had to make a decision. Do we do it or do we not? And we did. And, we have some helicopters with a lot of bullet holes in them right now. Probably you know that. No, I'm very honored to have rebuilt our military. We rebuilt our military in my first term. I'm using it in our second term. And we are the most respected country anywhere in the world with the greatest military anywhere in the world. Thank you. So we have
All right. That's what you got from Trump today, folks. That is what you got from Mr. Donnie T. I will not be live at 1 p.m. I think Steve and Tanner will be live. And so we'll be able to watch what Trump says at 1 p.m. on their streams. And I mean, we're going to see what Trump ends up saying, as that will be the most important thing today. And then we'll get into Tuesday's 8 p.m. deadline and see if that further continues. Word of the day. This is a weird one. I've never seen this word before. CH is a ch sound always. Yes, I'll be live for the market close. We'll have Chris on today. We'll talk some macro there. Chimmerkel? Chimmersial? There's no one ever heard of this word before. Wildly fanciful or unrealistic, based on imagination rather than reality. The projections looked impressive, but the assumptions fell chimmerkel. It's either chimmersial, like commercial. Is it as easy as commercial, but with a ch, chimmercial, or chimmerkial? I'm going chimmercial. It's got to be chimmercial. It's got to be like commercial. How do you say this shit? How do you say it?
Chimerical.
Oh, get the fuck. All right, I'm done. Yeah, well, have fun with that.
Chimerical.
Really? A chi? A C and a H is a chi now? Cool. You know what? This is... I don't have much more to say. I really don't. I'll see you guys on the market close. That's just fucking dumb. Bye. Bye, guys. I'll see you guys later. This is stupid. This is so dumb.